board secretary saying that on SB 2406, that Mr. Renner has conflict and will have to step down. So we should determine at the outset of the meeting whether we're going to be able to go forward with that. So that
Okay, so I think if Justin comes, we have 5 right now already. As far as I know, Justin is supposed to come, so we should have 6. And if not, we're just gonna, let's wait a few minutes.
There's so many people in the meeting, I can't see who's here. All I can see is.
We have 5.
Ellie. Oh, Jake is here. I thought Jake wasn't coming.
I know. I blamed him on you. I told him.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay, and Dave Garfield is here too.
Okay.
Allie, on 2406, did we start the testimony last time? I have some notes. I
put the minutes from the last meeting in the online folder.
Oh, so I'll take a look.
There was something started. I don't remember this.
Okay, Allie, it's after 6, so we're live, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Allie, as soon as you're ready, we can start the meeting.
Okay. It's being very slow. All right, I'm ready when you are. Thank you.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. Let's rise and salute the flag. Mr. Jackson, you have a flag? Yes, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ali, could you please read in the certification of compliance?
The time, date, and location of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger and posted on the bulletin board in the office of the Township of Lakewood at least 48 hours in advance. The public has the right to attend this meeting, and reasonable comprehensive minutes of this meeting will be available for public inspection. This meeting meets the criteria of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you, Ali. Roll call, please.
Mr. Garfield.
Yes.
Mr. Stern.
Here.
Mr. Sable. Mr. Flintstone. Mr. Herzl.
Here.
Mr. Renner.
Here.
Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Meyer.
Okay, so
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Racick. Mr. Fuentes. Mr. Ackerman.
Okay, so Ali, we have a quorum, right?
Yes, we do. We have Mr. Garfield, Mr. Stern, Mr. Herzl, Mr. Renner, Mr. Meyer.
Okay, so we're going to continue. Swearing in professionals. Jackson.
I think you're on mute, John.
Do you swear affirm testimony you'll give before this court the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Memorization of resolutions.
Okay, thank you. So the first is SC 2463 for Esther Pasquez. It's a minor subdivision. Mr. Meyer was not here on that application.
Okay, do we have a motion on number 1?
I'll move it, Ellie.
Okay, I moved. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Second one is SP 2408 for McTavish Partnership. It's a major site plan. Everyone can vote except Mr. Flintstone.
Okay, do we have a motion number 2?
Ellie moves.
Moved. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Next one, SP 2459 for Heim Aronoff. It's a major subdivision. Mr. Meyer was not.
Okay, do we have a motion number 3?
I'll move it. It's Ellie.
Ellie moves. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is SD 2460, also for Heim Aronoff, major subdivision. Mr. Meyer was not there.
I couldn't hear that.
Before we vote, we just read it. I want to make an announcement. Please, everybody Turn off your microphone unless you're actually speaking.
Okay, there is an echo. Somebody is causing an echo over here. Okay, so we're holding in number 4, and I asked for a motion on number 4.
Number 4, yes, SD 2460.
I'll move it.
Okay, Ellie moves. All second, all in favor? Aye.
SD 2474 for Alexander Goldring. Mr. Meyer was not there.
Do we have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Rennick, second. All in favor?
I'm really excited with his participation over here tonight.
The last one, SD 2052, is an extension for Jacob Mermelstein. Ellie and Jacob cannot vote on this.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
David moves. All second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect Mr. Flansman has joined.
Thank you.
And let the record reflect that Mr. Flansman looks very relaxed. Yours.
I just took a ride down that slide behind me.
It looks like you're chilling.
Okay, so 1 second. We can't. Ali, can you see who's causing the echo?
I'm just trying to see who's lighting up blue right now. It might be, it's fixed.
It's fixed?
Yep.
It's much better. Thank you very much, Ali. Okay. We're on to the public hearing. Are there any changes to the public hearing?
I do have one change.
Moves.
The
All second, all in
application.
favor?
Aye.
You have a delay? You have a delay on your side?
I don't know where that came from. I'm not sure.
No,
Okay.
You have a delay.
This is for SD 2457 for Mr. Barr. We received a letter from Mr. Pfeffer, who was recently retained by the applicant. They're requesting to carry to a future meeting date. They've agreed to provide new notice because it has been carried a couple of times. We are anticipating that it will be scheduled for June 29, but they will be providing that new legal notice.
Okay, so we don't have to make an announcement.
Correct.
Are there any other changes?
This is Lois Sutton. I'd appreciate speaking, objecting to this request to adjourn. Mr. Barr, I represent Mr. and Mrs. Sutton.
Thank you. The board is in receipt of that request, Mr. Kurzel. My strong recommendation for the board's own of administering this matter, I think it will be much simpler with the complex legal issues that have been raised by the objectors to allow this matter to be adjourned so that they can be presented by counsel as opposed to a pro se applicant. So I strongly urge the board to grant the adjournment request.
I agree, because we're not extending it. It's a new application. We're not a new application, but they're going to set a new date. They're going to notice again. So we're not just pushing it off.
I would appreciate putting on the record that Mr. Pfeffer contacted me a few weeks ago with regard to this and mentioned that Mr. Barr had contacted him. Mr. Pfeffer, my understanding, is not new to this matter. I mentioned, he asked me about it, and I directed him to the website so that he could review the documents on file. And I told him that Mr. Pepe would be filing the letter brief. And an hour before, we get a letter saying that he's been retained and he wants it to be adjourned. This is the third time this has happened. It is unfair to the objectors.
All right, we got the point. Mr. Pfeffer, can you please respond to the factual allegations?
Yes, I spoke with Ms. Sutton on an unrelated real estate matter, and I indicated I may be getting involved. And Ms. Sutton indicated to me that Mr. Pepe was going to be filing a brief. I said, well, I'm not going to do anything until I see that brief. I reached out to the client, Barr did reach out to me. I said, have you received any brief? They said, no, they haven't. I spoke to them again a couple of days ago. I said, have you received any brief? They said, no, they haven't. I then went myself onto the website last night, and I saw that had been uploaded a brief. I contacted the applicant. They were unaware of the brief. If a copy had been sent to Barr, I was in contact with them. I told them I was not going to take on the case before I knew what the allegations were. The allegations, I only saw that for the first time, and they didn't know about it until I
cut this short. If it becomes an issue, you could put it in the presentation, but essentially you weren't formally engaged until today.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to grant them. We're going to grant them they have to renotice. I'm going to grant them the extension.
All right, thank you, everybody. So,
Okay,
Ms. Morris, what's the date that will be?
they renoticing.
June 29th.
Do we have a date now?
Notice, yeah.
We don't have a date yet?
It's June 29, but I have to renotice.
Okay, so who's ever here tonight on bar, which is now listed as number 6 on the calendar, the 2457, that will be heard on, I'm sorry, June what?
29th.
9th.
June 29th, 2021, in this virtual format.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of your client, you waive any of the statutory time periods if they're applicable?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we proceed, I would like to ask any board members, if there are any board members who we're down only to 6 people or 5, and I think Mr. Rennet has a conflict with number 3. Do any board members have a conflict with any applications tonight? Besides number 3 for Mr. Rennet? Okay, seeing none, so.
Mr. Herzl, I did review the other applications. I should not be sitting on number 3, number 5, or number 6.
Okay, hold on. Number 3, number 5, number 6. Okay. Do any other, besides Mr. Renner, any other members have any conflicts? Mr. Renner, I see when you're open, there's an echo. Okay, seeing none, we'll go forward with number 1.
I'm sorry, I just want to mark this correctly, and I'm not sure Mr. Renner has the agenda after I changed it from moving Mr. Barr to no to carry. I believe he has conflicts on SP 2406, SP 2430 AA, and is the last one Picard Shabbos that you have a conflict with?
No, I'm sorry. Let me just say it. Even with the,
Thank you.
I have a conflict with 2406, 2369, and 2413.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So we on to number 1. Does anybody have a conflict with number 1? Seeing none, we'll go ahead with number 1.
Okay, starting with number 1, we have SP 2404 made by 7480 Broadway LLC. It's a major site plan for a synagogue and a house located on Broadway Avenue in the Oak and Vine area. Give me just a moment and I will pull up the application documents.
Okay, thank you, Ali. And Harry, as soon as Ali has it up on the screen, if you can please go through your report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be reading beginning page 3 of our May 21st letter.
Oh, boy. Oh, wait. May 23rd?
I have May 21st for SP 2404, correct. That's the one that Lee has up front.
I have, the package came April 19th, so there was a later one. Okay,
That's correct.
I didn't see the later one yet. I only saw the April 19th.
All right, this is a revised version of the original. Dated May 21st, Ally has it up on the screen. I'm going to start on the top of page 3 under submission waivers. The waivers include proof of submission to County Planning Board, topo contours and man-made features within 200 feet, plans and profiles and EIS. We can support the waivers for hearing purposes for reasons stipulated in the letter.
Okay, do we have a motion to go along with engineer's recommendations?
So moved, Justin.
Justin move.
Ellie second.
Ellie second. All in favor? Aye. Now I would ask anybody who's not speaking, please mute yourself because there's an echo. I'm going crazy. Thank you.
All right, continuing on at the bottom of page 3 of our review under zoning, as indicated per comment 2, front yard setback variance appears to be required as indicated. Continuing on page 4 of our review, comment 3, rear yard setback variance is required. 4, maximum building coverage variance is requested. 5, we'll get testimony shortly, but off-street parking relief may be required. Comment 6, relief is necessary from buffer requirements. Comment 7, relief is necessary for parking within the buffer. That is it with regard to zoning. And finally, on page 5 of our review, under design waivers, Roman numeral 3, design waiver is required for the non-residential driveway with proposed exceeding 30 feet, as well as the number of driveways. And that's all the relief, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Who's the attorney on this application? Mrs. Weinstein.
Weinstein on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, hello, Mr. Weinstein.
Hello.
Okay. Who's the engineer on this?
And Brian Flannery is the engineer. If you don't mind, I'll get started.
Yeah, please.
Before you do that, why don't we put Mr. Flannery on the oath? Mr. Flannery,
Okay.
just confirm that the testimony will give before this board will give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner.
Okay, Mrs. Weinstein, please proceed.
Thank you so much. A whole new city consisting of streets of duplex housing has virtually cropped up in the Oak and Vine section of the township in the last couple of years. However, not many synagogues have been built to accommodate this growing population in this area, many whom have migrated here from Brooklyn. This application is for preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a new shul with a separate area for the rabbi's residence, where for a prominent rabbi from the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn to reside. Our testimony will show that the few variances sought are in fact justified under the municipal land use law. I do want to point out that there were many letters sent in support of this application, which I am sure Ali will make part of the record. I also want to point out that the initial application was for a far more aggressive application. The applicant has been working literally days and nights with the objecting neighbor to scale down the building and accommodate all neighbors' concerns. There will not be a simcha hall on the premises. There will be a mikveh in the basement of the shul section, and the basement of the rabbi's house is strictly going to be used as a play area for the rabbi's large family of children and grandchildren. But with that, I'm going to turn over to Brian and ask that Brian specify all the variances and set forth the positive and negative criteria for each.
Okay,
So
Brian?
as Miriam indicated, this property is in an area that was the Oak Street core, which is developed primarily with duplexes on 10,000 square foot lots. This particular property was actually subdivided into 4 separate lots that would accommodate 4 duplex units at a coverage of 35% building coverage. The applicant is here this evening, as Miriam indicated, looking for approval, a site plan approval to construct a rabbi's residence and a shul. The shul would be for praying and learning with a mikveh for the congregants, and there will be no hall associated with the shul. Getting to the zoning criteria, as indicated in Terry's report on page 1, this is a permitted use. The residence and the shul are permitted uses in the R10A zone. We're asking for a minimum, well, we submitted for a minimum front yard setback variance. 30 feet is required, and the front entrance was covered, which triggered a front setback requirement. The applicant, to reduce the relief that's required, is indicating that the front entrance will not be covered. Therefore, we don't need it, no longer need a front setback variance. Going to page 4 of the report, we are requesting a minimum rear yard setback variance. And if you look on A1, which was submitted by the applicant, the tax map, it indicates that the property to the south of this, which would be where the rear yard is a 100-foot deep property owned by the township of Lakewood, and it's currently woods. And we also submitted a aerial exhibit.
Which property is that? Which property is that? For the record.
It's block 1044, lot 5 and lot 7 are both owned by the township of Lakewood.
Thank you, Harry. You're very fast. Okay.
And Surf Avenue is the line of the John Franklin Park. If you look at A2 that was submitted,
Is surf paved, or that's a paper street?
what was the question?
Is surf a paper street or it's a regular street?
Surf is a paper street. New Line submitted in aerial overlay, sheet 2 of 2 of the aerial overlay. Ally did very well flipping it upside down, so it was in the same orientation. I'll do the same thing, so it's in the north-south orientation with the is similar to the tax map. And you can see on that, right behind the proposed property, it's woods owned by the township. Directly behind the woods owned by the township is the John Franklin Park. The parking lot has actually been constructed in the Surf Avenue right away. So it's not like Surf Avenue is going to be put in. So the point is there's no house behind us. It's a buffer to the township park, and there's no adverse impact to the neighbor based on the minimum rear yard setback requested. Item 4 in the report indicates we're asking for a maximum building coverage variance. We're asking for 31% building coverage, and the ordinance specifies for residential development 35% is allowed. For houses of worship, only 25% is allowed. And the board will probably remember when the R10A was first approved, it was indicated that the residential coverage should be 30%. And what was going on back at that point prior to 2016 is most applicants that came in on most jobs for shuls and for dwellings were requesting variances because with the decks being counted and some of the other amenities, the building coverage that was typical in Lakewood was more like 35%. So in 2016, by ordinance number 2016-34, the governing body indicated that residential development can be at 35%, but places of worship can be at 25%. This is a rabbi's residence with a place of worship. We're indicating that the ordinance requires 25%. We're asking for 31%. When you look at A2 and see the building coverage that's surrounding us, I would refer to this to an extent as infill development and an infill of an inherently beneficial use. We're providing a needed shul in this neighborhood for the residents of the area. The next item in Terry's report is off-street parking. We are providing parking in accordance with the ordinance. Terry's question is with respect to catering or a hole in the basement, and the applicant has indicated that as a condition of approval, and certainly his intent is that there's not a hole in the basement, and there never will be a hole in the basement.
How big is the synagogue, the upstairs, the main sanctuary?
The main base measure is 1,781 square feet, which requires 8 parking spaces, and we're providing 25.
It requires 18 and you're giving 25.
Well, we're also providing for the residents.
So you're exceeding for what the shul needs. Unless you're giving for the residents. So basically you're not asking for a variance on that.
We're not asking for any variance relief with respect to parking.
Okay.
We are asking for relief with respect to buffer. We're providing landscaping and a 6-foot fence. And again, if you look at the property, we're not negatively impacting any of the neighboring properties. We're asking for parking within the buffer. And again, we're providing landscaping and a 6-foot fence. With respect to the design waivers, we're asking for a design waiver for a driveway in excess of 30 feet. And we have the parking broken up into a lot and then parking along Broadway. And we're also asking for a design waiver for the number of driveways. We're asking for 3 driveways as opposed to 2. And I think when you see the driveways that are proposed, they're consistent with the driveways that are provided for the residential dwellings along the street. And I think this is a infill development that will fit in very nice with the neighborhood. looking for the reasons for the relief that we're requesting. If you look to the master plan of 2017, the vision statement on page 7, indicates to encourage development and redevelopment based on smart growth planning principles such as balanced mix of land uses, pedestrian friendly and transit oriented environments with a sense of place. And certainly it's my professional opinion that this does this. It says to provide sufficient educational, recreational, and community facilities to meet future needs. And this is a need that this community needs. So it's my testimony that this does this. On page 23, it encourages infill development, and we have a neighborhood that's pretty much developed. There's an open lot that's available for this inherently beneficial use, and it's my testimony that that complies with that. The municipal land use law, NJSA 40:55B2, under the purpose of the act, A is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. It's my testimony that this application does that. We're asking for a C2 variance for the coverage at 31% instead of 25, and for the rear setback at 10 instead of 20. For the C2 variance, we need to show it relates to a specific piece of property. We have this property that was approved for 4 duplexes that could be built here at 35% building coverage, which would add 8 families to the neighborhood and would further decrease the availability of shuls and spaces for the existing neighborhood to pray. So it's my testimony that this fits that. I've enumerated the purposes of the municipal land use law that would be advanced. The variance can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good. It's an inherently beneficial use that will benefit this neighborhood. It's intended as a neighborhood shul. And the rabbi has stipulated that, you know, it's there for praying and learning, and it has a men's mikvah associated with it. The variance will not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Both uses are permitted, and we have to show that the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. And my testimony is that the 31% coverage that's asked for and the rear setback that's to a township open space lot, it certainly has no negative impact, and the positive impacts by providing this facility for the neighborhood far outweighs what I consider to be no negative impact. Continuing through the report, in review comments, the first question is, will catering be proposed? And the answer is a very firm no. And we would expect and appreciate a condition in the approval if the board acts favorably that would indicate that. With respect to handicap parking, we're providing sufficient handicap parking. Will satisfy all of the comments in Terry's report to the satisfaction of the board engineer and the board. Most of them are informational in nature.
What's with the garbage?
Garbage, there is a trash receptacle that's provided, and the trash will be rolled out as approved by the Department of Public Works.
Okay, and sidewalks, you're putting sidewalks around the
Full sidewalks. We're not asking for any relief with respect to that.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions for Mr. Flannery?
For the chair?
Yeah, Mr. Stir.
Brian, do you have, I did not see in the packet, I did not see online the actual building plans. I'd love to see the plans for like the lower level and the upper level. Just, can you show us some interior plans?
I'm sure, Ally, they were submitted. I'm sure Ally could pull them up.
Yeah,
I'm not seeing them.
They're there. They're on the drive.
Okay, there. Can you pull them up? Maybe I'm not.
Look at 15016.
15016.
okay, Ali's quicker.
It certainly is. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't scroll down. Bad on me. Bad on me. All right. So, Ally, just go to the lower level. Okay. Yeah. Let's start from the. Okay. So that's the family. You come in, basement, lobby, rabbi's office. Okay. Is there, I guess, go up or go down? Yeah, keep going. That's the women's section. Fine. Keep going. What's the basement? That's the playroom for the rabbi.
That's in the house.
What's the dressing room?
That is a mikveh. He's showing
That's
you
for the
shower.
mikveh. It's a
Oh.
men's mikveh.
Lobby, coffee, shamash, office, mechanical. And storage is just for the rabbi's house?
It would be any materials that need to be stored.
Basically, it's gonna be part
Where's
of
the
the.
stuff? Is that the stuff on the top?
What do you mean, what type?
Above dressing room, where's that? At the two things above on the top right of the picture.
That's steps and that shower.
You're showing now is not the one that's in the drive.
Aha.
You know, who's ever controlling the Zoom, maybe we could zoom out now on that, so you can see all four together now that Mr. Stern has seen each one individually.
Ally, did you hear me?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to look up. Which one's
So if
on
you go to
this
15 of
one?
16 in the drive.
I'm afraid to open Google Chrome because it really slows my computer. What's it titled in the drive? Unfortunately, I got like many different versions of plans from Lines in the last couple of days on all their applications, and I had a hard time knowing what was sent to the board and what's public and what's been reviewed by Terry.
Okay, well, that's a problem.
This is the most recent one that I have saved in my digital file.
Which one?
The one that we're looking at.
Well, let's look at the one that Ellie's looking at.
All right.
The one that's on the drive is 2020-3-11 underscore 74-80.
Okay, I'm missing something. Planning for 5.
I like the one that Ally had up much better. So if that's the last one, I like that much better.
Shoulder hall, maybe in the basement.
Scroll down. It's 15 of 16. It's the second to last.
March 11th. So that would have been before the plan review meeting. I apologize. I must not have uploaded the most recent version.
The basement here is the bottom left.
Right, so let's make it big, please.
I like the one that Ellie's had before, but
Oh, so we have a kiddish hall there, and
No,
now
we don't. That's what they're taking it out.
well, let's make sure we have the ones we're approving are the ones that we think we're approving.
Okay, so Brian will put it on the record.
Yes.
No kiddish hall.
There is no kiddush.
So this is the an older plan, which is being disregarded. So Ali, let's bring the current plan that we're going to be voting on, or not.
I also just uploaded it so that the current one's in the online drive for the public as well.
Okay, so Brian, help us. Did each one of these plans have a specific reference? Like, I don't want to approve this and we think, oh, well, see, there's the kiddish hall that was there, and that's not what the neighbors wanted. And let's just make sure we're, again, tying up the loose ends.
During resolution compliance, the board engineer will make sure that there's not a plan with a kiddush hall. There's the testimony is there will not be a kiddush hall. And as part of resolution compliance, if the board acts favorably, the plans that get approved and the plans that will be on file will be ones without a kiddush hall.
But let's be a little bit more precise than that. What is the plan number, the version number, the one that doesn't have the kiddush hall?
Unfortunately, it doesn't
Is
look
there a
like.
date on the newer plan? Those old plans were from prior to the meetings with the neighbors.
Miriam, hold on one second. Everyone hold on 1 minute. Hold on. Stop. Ally Morris, what were you about to say?
So the latest plan that I have, the file number that we're looking at now is dated 2021-510. However, the date of the drawing is 10/19/20, and it has no revision dates on it, so it's difficult to track these plans when they are not properly dated.
All right, now this is the applicant's issue, and it's making it difficult for the board. Mr. Stern and Mr. Renner, you've made comments about this, and any other members. Is this satisfactory? I'm concerned that this hasn't been online beforehand. But, are you satisfied to proceed in this manner with representation to her?
I am, but just for future reference, I mean, I do real estate. We have a space plan. We have version 1, version 2, version 3, and we date them. So this is dated 10/19/20, both of them. So just in future, when we get,
I think Ali said the other one was dated the 11th.
huh?
I think Ali said the other one was dated the 11th.
No, but if you look, no, what you do, you look at the lower right-hand corner that tells you job number,
Right.
check,
I did.
date, drawing number. So you got 2 Z1s. There should be a Z2, right?
It wouldn't be a Z2, Bruce. The
Z2.
revision date should have been added on the plan so that the most current revision date would be available. And
That's all I'm saying.
yes,
Okay, so, but
Mr.
Brian,
And
let's be
Mr.
very
Flannery,
clear.
just explain, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This is important. You see where it says, revision legend? It's, in a different direction on the right side above floor plans. Up, we just moved.
Yes.
This gets confusing because whenever they revise the plans, it'll have the same numbers in that lower right corner, but it'll have a date. So, May 1st will be different than April 1st.
Okay, but then at least you have 2 days. We ain't got no date.
You're right about that. And like
Can we
the
mark
date on
it?
that is October 2020.
Okay, Mrs. Weinstein.
Can we
could
mark
give me
the
one
correct
second.
set of plans?
Yeah,
And specify that those are the correct ones without the kiddish hole?
okay, and any other plan that we have is null and void.
That is correct. The plan that's showing the kiddish hall is null and void.
Okay. For the record to reflect that Brian and Mrs. Weinstein both, Brian, you're testifying that too. That's null and void. We're only dealing with the plan that has no kiddish hall.
that is correct.
Okay, I want that to be clear for the record. But if we approve it, we're approving it based on this plan with no kiddish hall.
Correct.
Well, the problem is, how do we identify this plan? Because there's
The
a couple
date,
of
10/19. The other one is 10/11, I think. I think Ali said.
Now, the dates on the plans are the same. Terry, the board engineer, is capable of seeing the plan that was submitted, the most current one, and that it does not have a kiddish hole.
But Brian, I agree. We have a very talented engineer, but it is not the responsibility of the engineer to properly mark the documents.
You're absolutely right.
Talking about things, we know what it is we're referencing. We're all talking the same thing. This is not a substantive concern. This is just process, tying up the loose ends.
And to be fair, if we were at a regular meeting, somebody would go over and put an exhibit sticker on the one that we were looking at, and there would be no ambiguity. It's hard to do it.
That is well taken. Point well taken.
Ali, is there any way that you can mark this exhibit?
I did,
No, you're writing very well. With your red pen there, you're writing very well.
I did change the file names in the planning board, digital files, so they are labeled appropriately there. And luckily, since this is a recorded meeting, we have the video reference anytime it's needed, available on the township website. I could also put a screenshot of the plan itself in the minutes if the board would like.
Now, what about calling this A1, A2, writing on it?
Well, this is I believe it's already labeled. Hold on just a moment.
I mean, Mr. Chair, the point's well taken. That Brian's point is well taken. Terry will not forget, and Terry will get this right, and we do resolution compliance. But we shouldn't have to rely on that. That's all I'm saying. Small point.
I've labeled the digital file as A5 public hearing arcs as well. So
I just wanted for the record, it should be very clear that we're not talking about any kiddish hole. We're not, okay. Any other board members have questions for Mr. Flannery? Okay, so I think we have Mr. Gazarovski. Are you on this application?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I have some questions, but before we move on, my recollection is that somewhere during the proceeding, there was an exhibit shown of the basement, which referred to a storage room and a playroom. And the question was asked, what would be stored in the storeroom? I thought that the response indicated that that part of the building, which was being utilized for the shul would also have access to use that storage room. And if that's the case, that does impact the requirements for parking. So what exactly is the proposed basement plan that this board will be voting on this evening? Because
Mr.
if you
Flannery?
recall,
I'd be happy to
the
respond
plan
to
shown,
I'd be happy to respond to that because I respectfully disagree with Mr. Gazarovski's opinion that having storage area for a shul results in additional parking. Section 18-905 of the UDO lists parking regulations for shuls, and the parking regulations are subject to three separate parts. The first part is based on the size of the main sanctuary. The second part is if there's a hall, and the third part is if there's more than 5 changing rooms for a mikvah. And the storage areas that could be used, because this is a rabbi, his residence and his shul, and I don't see anything in the ordinance that would indicate that storing items that a shul may need to store or a family may need to store impacts parking.
So, but Mr. Flannery, I think more clear is, I think that's what Ms. Grassi is trying to say, that the storage room will not turn into some hall. We're putting it on the record, storage room stays storage room.
That is correct.
Well, let's put it this way. Does that storage room have windows?
Typically, a storage room would have windows. There's no reason not to have windows on a
I
storage room.
didn't ask whether it was a good or bad idea. I just asked if it has windows, because
Okay.
the playroom would, right? I don't see any windows on the exterior of the building. The magic arrow is directing me to that.
Okay.
So, and in addition, how big what's the dimension of that storage room?
It provides the area on that.
Are those
plan
hearts that
Valley
you're
goes
doing
back.
over there?
Valley goes back.
I was just trying to circle what I assume are like the emergency access windows down there.
Okay.
There's little rectangles all along the bottom.
Ali, how do you write so neat with the mouse? Okay, so let's go back to, you want to know the dimensions? It's 45 by 20, roughly, 26? No, by 18?
About 1,000 square feet.
Roughly, yes.
You're saying it's a basement area, anything could go down there, it's just for storage, and that'll be
Yes.
conditional of the approval.
Yes.
It'll be a
The
condition of
condition of the
approval.
approval.
So, Ali, you had said that you could take these plans that are being put on the screen, you could take a screenshot and electronically save them, and that these will be the ones clearly identifiable as the ones that were correct?
Yeah, I will also put an image of the 3 floor plan layouts directly in the minutes.
Okay.
What stops the playroom wall, the room between the playroom and the storage from being knocked down?
We're happy to a condition of the approval that it doesn't get knocked down.
Okay.
And there-
May
there's
I ask
certain-
may I ask a question, please?
Yes, Mr. Gazarovski.
In looking at this exhibit, is this in fact the basement plan, which will be a part of the approval if in fact this matter is approved?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with the storage room. Will the operation of the synagogue in the adjacent basement area have access to utilize that storage room?
There's an exterior entrance to the storage area, and just like St. Mary's, where I used to go to church, in the rectory, there was a basement area down below where they would store any church items. Since this is a rabbi's residence and a shul, any items that need to be stored, that would be the area to store it.
Okay, including items utilized by the shul.
Yes.
Okay. Now, going to the playroom area, will that playroom be limited solely to the usage by the rabbi's children or social guests, but not open to the individuals who utilize the shul?
That will be available only for the rabbi's family, not for the congregants.
And for his guest.
Now, going further to the right, I see there, and I'm a little, maybe I'm missing something here, but it says a dressing room. What is that about?
For the mikvah.
Okay. Now, with regard to the area of both the storage and the playroom, will the storage area be air conditioned?
No, the storage area would not be air conditioned.
Will the storage area have finished walls?
Yes, the storage area would have finished walls.
What type of finished walls will it have?
Sheetrock.
Okay, and that I take it will be painted in some fashion?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how about with regard to lighting? What kind of lighting will be in that storage area?
The typical ceiling mounted storage lighting.
Okay, lighting which can be utilized both for storage as well as some type of occupancy.
There would be a restriction that it's for storage only, no occupancy.
Okay, would you agree that when you're speaking in terms of restriction and any approval, would you agree that those restrictions can be incorporated into a filed deed restriction in the Ocean County Courthouse?
No, I would, if I can interject, I would not agree to a deed restriction simply because a deed restriction is virtually impossible to ever remove other than by a court. And again, Mr. Gazarovski, we're agreeing there will be no change of use from storage and playroom without coming back in front of this board. But let's just say your client no longer owns his property.
No deed restriction. Let's move on. Mr. Gazarovski, next question.
I didn't hear your comment, Mr. Jackson.
I said they don't agree to a deed restriction. Next question.
You know that they don't. Well, Mr. Jackson, would you agree with me that the best way to enforce this restriction would be with a deed restriction?
You don't want to ask me that, and I'm not cross-examining. I mean, if you'd like me to give my opinion on that, I'd be happy to, but the applicant says they don't want to agree to it. You can make your argument to the board.
But they do agree, I'd be part of the record.
How about with regard to the storage area? Will there be any plumbing by way of commodes or wash areas or the like?
No plumbing in the storage area.
Okay. Would you agree that if in fact this board were to approve this project, you would come back to the board with an appropriate paragraph to be included in any approval restricting the usage of the storage area?
Well, we're indicating that we're okay with that, and I feel that Mr. Jackson would be very capable of putting an appropriate paragraph into the resolution of approval.
Now, how about with regard to the playroom? I see that there is access from the playroom into the adjacent area where you have the dressing room and other facilities. Why is that necessary?
Because the nature of a basement is that it doesn't always lay out as nicely as the upstairs, where there's the availability to have different entrances and separate areas.
Well, if the intended use of the playroom is solely for the use of the rabbi's family, why would you have to have access into the area where the shul is?
If you had gone to architectural school and had studied some of the spatial relationships with the upper floors, and then that establishes the size of the building below, the basement is the stepchild of the design, and the basement gets what's ever left over. And in order to fit the men's mikveh, this is the configuration that works out the best.
Well, you could seal off the area of the playroom and the storage area from the adjacent shul use, couldn't you?
There's a lot of different things we could do. In my professional opinion, there's no reason to do that.
Well, would you also agree that in your professional opinion, if in fact the occupants of the shul did in fact want to utilize portions of the storage in the playroom, they could easily do so the way that you have put together this plan?
Again, if somebody wants to do something different than what's permitted, there's no way of stopping them. I have confidence in the rabbi, the same as I did the Monsignor at St. Mary's, that he's not going to let people go do stuff in the basement that's not appropriate.
Can I
Well, I
interject
don't
for a
know- I
second?
don't know.
This is Ellie. Can I just interject?
Yeah, Mr. Renner,
Is it-
1 second. Ellie, please.
Is it
Mr. Renner,
appropriate? Yes.
You can
Is it
speak.
appropriate for me to ask, Mr. Gazarovski, are you representing a close neighbor? Are you representing a land? Just to understand who the objecting people are over here. If you don't want to answer, that's fine as well, but
I think it's right that it has to be put on the record either.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the last comment that was made.
The question was, who do you represent, Mr. Gazarovski? Who are the objectors
Let me represent
and their addresses?
to the board that I've been retained by a gentleman named Moses Kraus, and I have received a retainer check from him to represent his interest in this matter. And he is a property owner through whatever entity it may be in the area of this application and is an interested party.
And Mr. Leonard, I apologize. I should have made certain that the Objectors Council were identified. So, Mr. He has standing as property in Lakewood?
Ellie, could you please see who's echoing again?
Now, this is really breaking up for me. I'm having difficulty hearing.
Okay, just give me 1 second, Mr. Gazarovski. I'm gonna let you continue. Ellie, could we mute everybody who is making noise?
Let's ask Kristen to do it. And it sounds like she did.
Okay, Mr. Gazarovski, please continue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. I'm sorry. Would you agree with me that the lot in question is a fully conforming lot with regard to the size of a lot, the square footage, and the dimensions?
This is one of the rare occasions where I do agree with you, Mr. Gazarovski.
It's very kind of you, Mr. Flanagan. I need all the help I can get. Having said that, when you say it's a fully compliant lot, would you then agree with me that whether one were seeking to build townhouses on this property or one were seeking to construct the type of use that your client is seeking, one construct it of such a size and dimensions that it would be fully compliant with the zoning ordinances of the Township of Lakewood, rather, I'm sorry.
Well, townhouses are not a permitted use in the R10A zone.
Okay. The residential use, which is permitted, okay?
If a structure was permitted that was fully compliant, yes, it would be fully compliant.
Well, if you were to look to construct, let's say, a residential use on that property, would there be any justification for seeking variances for rear yard setbacks or front yard setbacks or elimination of buffers and the like?
Well, a residential use requires no buffer, so there would be no reason, there would be no buffer relief that would be required.
Well, is there a requirement for side yard and rear yard setbacks?
Yes, there is.
And
You
you're
know,
seeking a
Mr.
rear yard
Gazarovski, I
variance.
don't mean to interrupt you, but an applicant, when you say, would they, anybody could ask for variances, and there are different criteria for relief. So it depends on the application. Anyone can ask for any variances. So just because you have a conforming lot doesn't mean that the only available option is to build a conforming structure on that conforming lot.
Yeah,
It
Mr.
depends on a
Johnson,
lot of
It's
variables.
not-
and it's a beneficial use for the area to have a synagogue there also.
Well, but you know, there's criteria under C1 and under C2 as well. C2, if you advance the purposes of zoning, but that's, I just don't want the board to think that. I think your point is well taken, that yes, you could build a conforming structure here, and that is to be considered in conjunction with whether there's a hardship. But I don't know that the applicant's case is totally based on hardship in this instance.
The applicant is not claiming hardship at all. It's not a hardship application. I clearly said it's a C2 application. We're asking the relief under C2. We're no longer asking for a front setback. So as Mr. Gazarovski asked, we could build 4 duplex units that would not need a front yard setback. We don't need a front yard setback. Would not need side yard setbacks. We don't need side yard setbacks. They could be at 35% impervious coverage. We're only asking for 31% impervious coverage. And the only variance we're asking that has an impact on a neighboring property is the rear setback, and that's to a township-owned open space lot to the rear.
Now, you say township-owned open space lot to the rear. Do you know whether or not that lot, which is to the rear of the property, has a deed restriction on it saying that it must be utilized for open space?
I'm not aware of any deed restriction on the property. What I am aware of, it's on a paper street, and the township has elected to construct a parking lot on that right-of-way of the paper street that would need to be demolished and at the elimination of parking, which is very valuable in Lakewood, in order to accommodate any development.
Okay, let's go to the review letter. And you pointed out very clearly, the board engineer did, that a minimum rear yard setback variance is required. He states the site plan indicates a rear yard setback of 10 feet is proposed, whereas a rear yard setback of 20 feet is required. Now, the applicant can reduce or diminish the size of his building and in fact comply with that setback requirement. Could he not? Yes or no?
Well, we're requesting a C2 variance because my testimony was that the benefits outweigh the detriments of doing it.
I know.
Mr. Flannery, does that mean the answer is yes, you could build a conforming structure?
Yes.
So if in fact the applicant were to in fact reduce the size of his structure with regard to the depth by 10 feet, he would be compliant with that requirement and still have a synagogue and a house, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now let's go to the maximum building coverage variance, which is required. I believe it's my understanding that the percentile of coverage is 31%. I thought that was your testimony, was it not?
That is my testimony.
Okay. Now, if one in fact were to reduce the depth of the building by 10 feet, thus reducing the square footage or the percentage of coverage, the applicant probably could also comply with item 4, which deals in terms of the variance you're seeking for building coverage by complying with the standard of the 25%. Is that not so?
I think your question was, can the applicant build a smaller building that complies with 25%? And the answer would be yes.
All right. So with regard to the first 2 items of relief you're seeking, that relief is really not necessary, except for the fact that your client wants to build a bigger building. Nothing
Mr.
else.
Chairman and Mr. Gazarovski, I think it's understood, and of course he can make a smaller building. You can make anything comply. That's not what they're seeking relief under. So I think the board well knows that if they eliminate any of the nonconformities, they'll conform. So I don't know if it's productive with this board to go through every item, cross-examination, and ask if they, make the building smaller, will it conform? The board knows that.
Mr.
How do I know?
Jackson,
How do I know? How do
one second.
First of all,
Mr.
I
Gazarovski, the
didn't
application,
hear Mr. Flannery testify that before I get started, I want to advise you that my client, in fact, can build a totally compliant building, but I'm still looking for some relief. I didn't recall hearing him say that.
he's saying he was
Well,
asking for.
you would have heard him say that if we were asking for C1 variances, which are hardship variances. But if you were paying attention to my testimony, I clearly indicated we were asking for C2 variances, where we show that the benefits outweigh the detriments. And the board is certainly sophisticated enough to understand that something different could be built here that requires no relief. The board, per the municipal land use law, has to balance whether it meets the criteria of a C2 variance.
Yeah, I understand that, but what you're really saying is I understand it. Yes, we can build a synagogue and a school. Yes, it is inherently beneficial, and I agree with that. But no, I don't have to build it to comply with. Well, what is the hardship of your building a building that's compliant?
Mr. Gazarovski, you've been doing this long enough to know that I'm not asking for a hardship, so I don't have to approve a hardship.
Okay.
That's something that changed in the 90s when both you and I had more hair. So that changed in the 90s. Right now, there's a criteria in the municipal land use law, which is the law that governs this, that says for certain variances, bulk variances, if you show that the benefits outweigh the detriments, the board makes a determination on whether to grant that relief.
So you have to show then that extra percentile is a greater benefit than building a building that complies with the zoning ordinance.
I have to show that the
Wait,
benefits substantially outweigh the detriments, and I provided testimony, and the board will make a decision on that.
All right, let's go on if I can, when we're talking in terms of parking. Just so it's clear in my mind, is it your testimony that if in fact portions of the basement that are under the residence are utilized in some fashion by the applicant, either for storage or a playroom for students, that does not trigger an increase in the amount of required parking? Is that your testimony?
My testimony was clear on what parking requirements are in the ordinance, and a storage room in a shul or a home does not require any parking.
Okay. I think, Brian, you didn't test, they're not putting students in that, Mr. Gazarovski.
That is correct. No students in there.
Okay, it's not a school that you bring students or anything in there.
Or in the playroom as well.
That is correct.
I think the testimony that he put on the record, the playroom is strictly for the rabbi's family.
Okay.
That is correct.
Before we spend a ton of time on this, Mr. Flannery has stated that we do not, storage area does not create parking. I don't think Mr. Vogt has had an issue with that. Mr. Gazarovski, do you have an ordinance that says to the contrary?
Now, let me proceed forward. My understanding is that if in fact there's an overlapping use, that overlapping to whatever percentile it is utilized, that increases the parking requirement, because otherwise that storage and that playroom would have to be under or in the basement of the shul, not in the residential use.
Okay. We've been through this on cross-examination 3 or 4 times now. Mr. Flannery's position is clear. He doesn't believe it generates a parking demand. If you want to make that assertion in your closing point.
One second. Mr. Gazarovski, he's using, under the synagogue, there's a mikveh. There's no place for any storage just under the house. It's not creating, they testified they're not creating any new uses. They're not using it for students. They're not using it for simples, not using it for anything.
Respectfully, I made my position known, and I'm always very careful when I'm dealing with issues of the religious use of a property. My position is, if any portion of the basement, which is under the the residential use, is part and parcel of the mikveh use, that would trigger an increase in the required amount of parking, because if you have it under the residential use, that gives you greater use of the area beneath the religious use. That's my position. and I'll move on if I may.
Okay, please.
Mr. Flannery, just tell me briefly where we're talking in terms of relief from the perimeter buffer. Is there a required perimeter buffer for this property?
Yes, there is.
And on what sides of the property is there a perimeter buffer?
Well, there's buffer required to the adjoining residence.
Okay. And that would apply to both sides, would it not? Because you are both sides developers, one undeveloped at the present time. You
Yes.
put up that exhibit.
A strict compliance with the ordinance would be a buffer to both side property lines.
Okay. And from simply a design standard, you are in fact able to provide some type of a buffer in that area, are you not?
We've provided landscaping and fencing, which, my opinion, complies with the intent of the ordinance, and the property owners adjoining this property that are directly impacted by it have been noticed. And if we ever get to the public portion of the meeting, we'll hear if those particular people feel that the buffering is inadequate.
We'll get there. But what you're really saying is, except for a stop, what type of a fence are you putting up?
Brian?
What was that question?
What type of a fence are you putting up?
A 6-foot vinyl fence.
Okay, and that'll be on 3 sides of the property, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I mean, do you typically see a 6-foot high vinyl fence in a residential area?
Yes.
You do, okay.
In a lot of residential areas in Lakewood, you actually see 8-foot high vinyl fences.
Okay, that's because you're trying to block, and what you're doing here is you're blocking off views of the parking lot, correct? Because if in fact you complied with the standards of the zone as far as buffer, you'd have less area available for parking, and you'd thus either have to get a variance or have a smaller building.
That is correct.
So with all the things that we've discussed, parking, size of the building, setbacks, you are able to be compliant with all of those, except for the fact that you want to build a building of the size that you wish to build.
That question has been asked and answered several times.
Mr. Gazarovski, please respect the ruling that we've been over that not dozens, but numerous times. Please move on to the next issue. You can make that point in your case, and we don't have to restate it for the 11th time.
This is the need, that's what the asking of variance for.
Mr. Jackson, I really don't understand your hostility to my cross-examination.
My hostility is to repeating and repeating when this board is one of the busiest in the state, and that we're working every week this summer to try to clear the backlog, and we have 5 other cases on the agenda tonight, and we're going over the same thing over and over, unduly using time. So I'm asking you to please respect the ruling and move on to the next issue.
Okay, I'm almost through. With regard to the area where the comment was made that the height of the fence must be reduced to 3 feet, can you kind of show me exactly where that will be, Mr. Flannery?
30 feet from the property line in the front setback. The 6-foot high fences are not allowed in the front setback.
So basically, in the front of this building, where one might normally have grass or whatever it may be, you're going to have a fence along that area as well as parking in the front as well.
I think 4-foot fence, right?
Correct?
Yes, a vinyl fence, and there a lot of the lots in the area and throughout Lakewood have fences less than 6 feet, a 4-foot fence in the front yard setback.
What are you proposing over there, Brian? In the front?
A 3-foot fence.
3-foot, okay.
Can we put up the aerial showing the houses there again, please, if you don't mind? Yeah, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would open it up to the public. Ali, do we have any public comments?
We received, I think, approximately 15 public comments. John did put together a letter summarizing that.
Are
Mr.
they
Jackson,
fu-
do you want to read that summary?
Are they all
There are 16 public comments. They have been provided to the board. The board has had an opportunity to read them. But of the 16 comments, all 16 were in favor, citing the need for a synagogue in the community.
I'm going to object to that. I mean, if people want to come forward and testify, that's fine. But for Mr. Jackson to simply make a comment like that,
Okay, Mr. Gazarovski, I don't think Mr. Jackson is testifying. They all send in emails, which is on the public record.
And they've all been provided to the board. And,
Right.
and this is what our process has been. And even under the rules of evidence, if this matter were in court, which do not apply here, particularly in light of the COVID limitations and what we have to do to provide a fair hearing, a summary of duplicative types of comments is even permitted under the rules of evidence. So in the interest of efficiency, rather than read each one of them into the record, even though they have been provided to the board, even though they are a matter of public record, I think it's fair to just make the summary that all of the comments were in favor, and there were, what would I say, 16?
Okay, Mr. Jackson, Ali, is Mr. Gazarovski, did he get a copy of all these public comments?
I don't have them.
They're all available on the online drive where the plans are in a folder titled Public Comments.
And Mr. Jackson, you went through all 16, and they're all basically the
Yeah,
repetitive.
the one that Ms. Morris has it up, we'll go to any one of them. You know, just by way of example, there's one dated May 23rd, Aaron Silver, he lives next to 2 Brunhurst. He knows the rabbi and he's planning to build in the neighborhood, which he thinks would be a plus for all the neighbors. Please approve the plans. That's just representative of the types of comments. The board's had the opportunity to view them. And under the DCA
Chairman,
guidelines,
Chairman,
we do allow
if I may respectfully,
comments to come in electronically.
I have in my hand a letter which was sent in by a gentleman named Yehuda Lebovics. It's dated May the 24th, sent to the Lakewood Township Planning Board. It says, "Dear board members, as a landowner in block 1044 and adjacent to the variances being requested by 74-80 Broadway LLC, we strongly object to this as it would ruin the whole beauty and conformity of the whole block and neighborhood. The setback variance requested in the back would do considerable damage to the whole block, as this would create a one building amongst all the houses that would block my views and disturb the whole layout and intent of the whole Oak Street corridor vision." So this is just but one letter, which I've gotten a copy.
What was this put on the record?
Was that filed with the board?
I'm not finding any record of that in my emails. Is that
Yeah,
an
Mr. Gazarovski,
email or a mailed letter, or what's the date?
Hold on,
on
let's
it?
take a moment. Mr. Gazarovski appears to have the signal. There, he looks like he's coming back.
You know, Mr. Jackson, if somebody did send us a letter, it has to be put on the record.
Yeah, I know. Well, let me I was asking him where he got that from. We don't appear to have it, but
I just told you that it was, I told you it was Yehuda Lebovics.
He mailed it to you?
Where'd you get that?
I think I'm making it up.
I don't have any emails with the name Lebovitz.
Hold on, let me handle this, please.
Sure.
Mr. Gazarovski, where did you get that letter from?
That letter was emailed to me by my client.
Okay, do you have any indication that that letter was filed with the board in accordance with the process that was advertised?
Let me just say that what I have on the letter, and I'll be very happy to read what I have. At the very top, it says SGKL LLC, 1309 Ridge Road, Lakewood, New Jersey, 24 May 2021, Lakewood Planning Board, dear board members, signed by.
Hold on, Mr. Gazarovski. We heard you read it the first time. All I'm trying to determine is whether this was part of the record and we missed it. I'm trying to see whether we have a flaw. You say you have a letter. I'm simply asking, was that filed with the board in accordance with the process? I'm not saying we will not consider it. I'm just asking whether it's something that we somehow missed.
I think Mr. Gazarovski said the applicant emailed it to him directly.
He's read it into the record and the board can take that into.
Okay, it was read into the record. Okay. Okay, so basically we have all the public
You
comments.
cannot open it. I don't know if we're keeping it.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, basically we have 16 public comments in favor, and Mr. Gazarovski has read one public comment into the record that's against this application. And with that, I will close it to the public.
Well, no, I think you have to ask if anyone's in the public who hasn't.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're right.
Correct.
So it stays open. Anybody in the public, I would ask Ali if you can please unmute everybody. Anybody? Is
Kristen
there
will
anybody?
help to do that.
Oh, Christine, please unmute everybody. And is there anybody in the public who would like to respond or give some public comment? I will wait till she unmutes everybody, then we'll give a minute or two. If anybody wants to go one at a time. Okay, Christine, is everybody unmuted?
I'm working on unmuting everyone.
Okay, tell me when you're ready.
No, she just spoke under union rules. Now we have to pay her a different scale.
She deserves it.
Okay, all good.
Okay, I will repeat my question. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this application, SB 2404, 74 Broadway, -80?
And please,
Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it to the public.
Oh, I did mute it.
is that Elaine Schoenfield? Do you have a comment?
Okay, is she muted? Schoenfeld, are you there?
Hello?
She's unmuted. I think maybe she was talking about commuting herself.
Mrs. Schoenfeld, are you there?
What's negative?
No, she must have muted herself. It went back to me.
Okay, okay, so it's closed to the public right now, and I would ask the board for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stern.
two more questions before we.
No
Okay.
problem. Please go ahead.
So I guess this is either for Brian or for, I'm not sure who this is for. Is this one lot that has two buildings or two lots that has two buildings?
The lot will be consolidated into one lot. Currently, there's 4 lots. If the board acts favorably, it will be consolidated into one lot.
And one building.
And it'll be like under the ownership of the nonprofit.
That is
Right.
correct.
Okay,
And it'll
good.
be one building, right, that's attached? It's one building
That is
total.
correct.
Actually, one building. Okay.
Yes.
Ali, one of the emails talked about the fact that went through it quickly. One of the emails talked about the fact that this development had 400 units built and no synagogue was provided. Can you pull that up, please?
Okay, got it.
The early ones.
That's what I had been doing.
Okay, Alan, also please mute. I don't need the background talking.
We're working on that right now.
The township did not require a synagogue when Oak and Vine was developed, which is a development over 400 units. Is that I mean, I guess I'm asking the professionals. It's really a tangent to this application, but it's kind of relevant. Is that a true statement? And if it's true, are there no requirement? I mean, give me some color on that, please.
I'd be happy to answer that, Mr. Stern, if you'd like.
Please.
The ordinance does not have any requirement for providing shuls. The Oak Street core was an application that was submitted to CAFRA on behalf of, at the direction of the governing body. And it was an area that had a lot of paper streets with a lot of separate lots. So rather than have it done piecemeal where one right after the other and the pieces don't fit and it gets to be sloppy, the township got a CAFRA permit, and then it's been built since then. I have represented at least 2 other shuls that have been developed in the area, and shuls are being developed to accommodate the needs of the residents, and this is one of them. There's no requirement in the ordinance that any developer provide a shul.
Which it wouldn't make sense from a First Amendment standpoint, but I would just, but you're saying there are shuls that have been developed in the area,
There's a few shuls.
That have been
but
approved, yes.
been approved, okay.
There's 2, 3 shuls that I know of, and it's, I went down to the area. It's a very, there's a lot of people, very dense area, a lot of houses over there. It says here 400 units, and I saw maybe 2, 3 shuls, that's it. So I think it's in desperate need to have another shul, and within walking distance that people are not going to drive it. It's in an area that people follow. Okay.
Okay.
With that, I would ask the board members if they would like to make a motion.
So I'll make a motion.
Mr. Herzl, wait, one
Oh,
moment,
yes.
speak up like this. But we have to ask Mr. Gazarovski if he's finished or if he has any comments or any kind of summation.
You said
and
that it was
then
finished.
If the applicant wants to, they may as well. I just want to make sure that Mr. Gazarovski's gotten everything.
No problem. No problem. Mr. Gazarovski, please go ahead. Please, you're muted. Mr. Gazarovski, you're not being heard. Wait a second, you have to unmute yourself. Kristen, could you unmute Mr. Gazarovski?
Touch anything.
Okay, now Mr. Gazarovski, you can start again. You're being heard now.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. You know, having appeared before this board on many occasions on many different types of applications, of course, including religious institutions. You know, it would be a very simple matter for the rabbi who seeks to construct what may be a very much needed religious use on his property to simply utilize the entire parcel for the shul, the synagogue. I mean, he could very easily purchase one of the townhouses. We could take this lot, which is fully conforming in size. He could probably build a building for the religious use, which is completely conforming with all of your requirements with regard to setbacks, with regard to buffer areas, and the like, and perhaps even have some area left over for outside recreation, or even recreation within the facility itself. That's just not unreasonable. And just with regard to the letter which I wrote, I would draw your attention to the fact that Mr. Lebovic says, as a landowner in block 1044 and adjacent to the variances being requested by 74-80 LLC, we strongly object to this as it would ruin the whole beauty and conformity of the whole block and neighborhood. Now, this is a person who owns the property immediately adjacent, it seems, to the proposed use. And I think
Hold on. Mr. Gazarovski, we lost you. Mr. Gazarovski?
the ability.
Mr. Gazarovski, hold on one second. We
Okay,
lost
he's-
you,
Stop
I'd
it.
say for the last 15 seconds. So you have to repeat that.
You think I can remember that far back, Mr. Jackson?
Let's just say the important part.
I'm celebrating my 80th birthday in 2 weeks. You get some slack. Okay?
Congratulations.
I'm sure that many of the residents of this particular community would welcome the presence of a religious facility on certain parcels of land which are conformity. And this property owner and this applicant is completely able and totally able to do that. And the result of which would undoubtedly be an architecturally attractive building solely to serve the needs of the community for their religious needs. Why is there the necessity for this applicant to also include in this a residence for himself? And this project, when it was approved, was not approved with this type of building. This type of building, while permitted, requires a number of significant variances, which do in fact impact the remaining houses. I would like you to keep those thoughts in your mind when you vote on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gazarovski.
Ms. Weinstein, Mr. Chairman, you should allow Ms. Weinstein an opportunity to some if she chooses as well.
Is Brian or
Thank you.
Mrs. Weinstein who's going to be speaking?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
All I would like to say is that we have made our case. There are 2 variances being requested. We have put on the record the proofs that are necessary to justify the granting of those variances, and I would ask the board to vote favorably on this, and also to bear in mind how many parties were actually in favor of this application versus how many were opposed to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Stern.
I feel like I have to make a couple comments on this, if I may.
Okay.
First of all, there is an article written by Judge Serpatelli many years ago, which is very, very important to take into consideration here. It's not appropriate for the board to count the number of people in the room. It's not the number of people, the quality of their objection, certainly, but it's not just a matter of saying, well, 18 in favor, 1 opposed. You can certainly take the comments to heart, but you can't just count heads. That's not appropriate. And another thing, Mr. Gazarovski asked you about a deed restriction. I'm not a big fan of them for the reasons Ms. Weinstein stated. I think that it's enforceable as a site plan violation, but the board also can take into account that type of thing, what happens in a basement, whether a wall is removed, whether it's actually used for play, that is extremely difficult to enforce. And I can't, there's a good chance that the code enforcement says, I just don't want to get involved in that kind of an infraction because it has religious overtones and everything. So, to paraphrase a movie, if you build it, they will come. If you set the stage for something like that, that becomes very difficult to enforce, to Mr. Gazarovski's point. Mr. Flannery recited the municipal land use law. We talked about C2. I apologize to Mr. Gazarovski if I seemed a little curt, but they were not seeking a C1 variance. They were seeking a variance under C2. However, I think the argument must be considered that there's 3 lots there, and Mr. Gazarovski's concept is you have plenty of room. You don't have to build 2 houses and a synagogue or whatever the configuration is here, and you could comply with all the zoning criteria, and you could be in harmony with the neighborhood, and you won't be overcrowded. You won't have the buffers. I'm paraphrasing his words. So under C2, I'm just going to give the board a quick refresher. There's different balancing under a C2 variance than there is under a C1. There's no hardship requirement, but the applicant must show that the purpose of the municipal land use law is advanced by a deviation. The variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and that the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. That kind of flips the test. In a lot of other variances, like under C1, it's the other way around. The detriments have to be substantially outweigh the benefits under C1. The tables turn. So here, when the applicant points to what is advanced in the municipal land use law, they have to say that what we're weighing that against, it substantially outweighs it. So I don't recall, I don't know what Mr. Flannery's testimony was on that, but they would have to consider those arguments. And I thank you for your indulgence. I just wanted to give the board the appropriate charge, so when you deliberate, you know what I believe the correct criteria is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Mr. Chairman, may I make one brief comment?
okay, I close the video. Okay, fast.
I consider Mr. Jackson a dear friend of mine and an excellent lawyer. If he felt that I was being curt with him, I want to apologize for that. I still think my position is correct, but I didn't wish to be disrespectful to him or to this board.
Okay, thank you.
You've done much worse than that, Mr. Gazarovski, and I've survived.
Okay, thank you. I'm closing it now to everybody. Mr. Stern, you wanted to make a motion.
I did, and I just, John, if you could, before I make the motion, John, I think it would be useful for our ongoing continuing education of the board. Can you maybe send us a summary of what you just articulated for the C1 and C2 so we can read them at our leisure and maybe understand them a little more deeply?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Stern.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the application, but that it's very explicit and clear that the storage room shall not be used for any type of simple gathering, food preparation, party
School-
space, or anything.
School, students, nothing.
It's storage. No people congregating or using that space.
And the playroom is for the family use only. No selling record.
I'm candidly not opposed to that, but so I'm not making that opposed.
Okay, no problem. Okay, do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second, Justin.
Justin, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Garfield. He probably needs to be unmuted. There we go. Mr. Garfield.
No.
Mr. Stern.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Renner.
Yes.
And Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Meyer?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Motion approved. Good luck. Okay.
Thank you.
You got a good night.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay, now, we're going on to number 3. I think Mr. Renner is stepping down on this one. So I just want to make sure that we still have a quorum. Ally, are we okay to go?
Yes, we still have Mr. Garfield, Mr. Stern, Mr. Flansbaum, Mr. Herzl, and Mr. Meyer.
Okay, so let's proceed. Could you please announce it when you're ready?
This is SP 2406 for River Ave Property 2. It's a major site plan for an office building on Chestnut Street.
Okay, Terry, as soon as you're ready. Ally, could you put it up on the record, please, on the screen, please? Thank you. And Terry, as soon as you're ready, you can go through the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm reading from our May 10th review. And I'm going to start at the bottom of page 2 under submission waivers. Submission waivers requested include topo, contours, man-made features within 200 feet, plans and profiles of utility layouts, shade trees, and EIS. We can support the waivers for hearing purposes for reasons stipulated in the letter.
Okay, do we have a motion to go along with engineer's recommendations?
Move. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Terry, please proceed.
Sure. Continuing on page 3 under zoning, our comment 2, we note that the existing lot area is non-conforming with regard to size. The property is 0.2 acres compared to the lot minimum of 1 acre. Lot frontage variance relief is requested as well as rear yard setback, as well as minimum side yard setbacks. And then under design waivers on page 4, under Roman numeral 3, buffer relief is necessary, as stipulated, as well as proposing a trash recycling enclosure with fencing instead of walls. Partial design waiver is required from providing curb along the project's entire Chestnut Street frontage. And finally, a waiver is required from not providing street trees. That's all the relief, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Who's the attorney on this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Adam Pfeffer, attorney on behalf of the applicant. As Terry indicated, we have an existing undersized lot that's approximately 0.29 of an acre. It's located on Chestnut. We are seeking an application to construct a 2-story office building with an approximately 2,676 square foot footprint, which ultimately will be a 5,352 square foot building. There were some concerns from some of the neighbors. We have had an opportunity to meet and discuss with several of those neighbors, and we believe we've addressed most, if not all, of their concerns. I have Brian Flannery here this evening to provide testimony, if I can swear him in.
Flannery, do you swear from testimony you'll give before the swear from these people?
Mr. Flannery? He's out on his boat.
I do. Ryan Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer, professional planner.
Mr. Chairman, do you accept Mr. Flannery as a expert in this field?
Yes. Yes, please proceed.
Thanks.
As indicated, this is for a office building, a non-medical office building on an undersized lot. The HD7 requires 1 acre lots. This is an existing 0.29 acre lot. It's one lot away from Route 9 on Chestnut Street and a very precarious location where Chestnut Street that ties into the realigned Chestnut Street. That's a county roadway. We're asking for 4,856 square feet of office. We require 1 parking space for every 250 square feet. So that equates to 19.4 parking spaces, and we provided 19. My professional opinion is that you round the number of parking spaces to the appropriate number. Rounding to 19 means we need, rounding the 0.4 parking space, we need 19 parking spaces. As indicated in Terry's report, the use is a office buildings are permitted use in the HB7. Item 2 indicates the lot area variance that we're requiring. It's an existing lot. There's nothing we can do. We did submit an aerial that shows where the proposed lot is, and we have the office/warehouse building on the old Chestnut Street, or the original Chestnut Street that is our westerly neighbor. There's another facility immediately adjoining us, and then behind us are residential houses. So there's nobody to make this lot bigger. And what's proposed is a permitted use and a good rateable for the township. The HC7 does also permit residential development, and my professional opinion is this would be a horrible location to put a conforming residential use. We also require a minimum lot frontage. Again, another existing condition. We have 83.33 feet where 150 feet is required. We're asking for a minimum rear yard setback. And if the board remembers, we came here to the last meeting. We had met with the neighbors, and the neighbor to the rear, we had proposed 10 feet, and that's residential development back there. We had agreed to reduce the size of the building and to increase the rear setback. So the rear setback variance that we're requesting now is 18.75 feet, where for the HD7, 50 feet is required. So the HD7 has 1 acre minimum lots. If we imposed all of the rear setbacks that were required on this property, there'd be no room left for a building. We're also asking for minimum side yard setbacks of 7.75 feet to the east and 11.58 feet to the west. And Terry's sixth comment with respect to parking is we're providing 19 parking spaces. My professional opinion is that conforms, because you divide the 4,856 divided by 250 gives you 19.4. You can't do a 0.4 parking space. So 19 would be the required number of parking spaces. We're asking for design waivers, relief with respect to buffers. If you look at the aerial that's submitted, we're in between commercial/industrial neighbors where the buffering will not adversely impact the neighbors. We're asking for a design waiver with respect to the trash and recycling, of having fencing rather than a trash enclosure. And again, we have a 0.29 acre site in a zone that requires 1 acre. It's a small site, so we're going to have a small facility accommodating that. The trash enclosure would be proposed on the east side of the building. And a partial design waiver is requested from providing curb and sidewalk along the entire project frontage. There's a utility pole that would need to be relocated, and it's a situation that has existed for many years since Chestnut Street was relocated, and I can't even remember when that was. I believe it was before I had gray hair. So with respect to the variances, where the justification, they're C2 variances. If you look at the master plan of 2017, the vision statement, it says encourage growth and development in appropriate
Brian, no
locations.
hardship. No hardships. C2, no hardships.
No hardships, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we actually, the existing area and width are hardship variances because that's all that we can have. The setbacks
C2.
would also be hardship variances, because if we impose all of the setbacks of the HD7 zone, we would be able to build nothing. But we could also show that they qualify as C2 variances where the benefits outweigh the detriments. We're providing a rateable an office use that provides for local residents not to have to travel too far. And if you look at the master plan of 2017, the vision statement on page 7 is encourage growth and development in appropriate locations consistent with established land use. When you look at the aerial, you can see that this is consistent with the established land uses for Chestnut Street. The municipal land use law, NJSA 40:55D2, under the purpose of the act, A is encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And my testimony is that by the development of this will satisfy that. It meets the general welfare by providing a needed office use and a rateable for the township. G, under the same section of the municipal land use law, is to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses. And it's my testimony that does this. The HD7 does permit residential development, and my professional testimony is that would not be the appropriate use of this site. The C1 variances of the hardships are pretty clear. Just a 0.29 acre site that's there and nothing to be done about it. But the C2, it relates to a specific piece of property. We have a small property in the HD7 zone between two commercial industrial uses. The purpose of the municipal land use law I had read to you. The variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. And I think the fact that the applicant met with the neighbors and made concessions to the neighbors so that it doesn't adversely impact them speaks to that. The variance will not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And a site of this size that provides the a permitted use and one of the appropriate uses for this property certainly does that. And then the benefits need to substantially outweigh the detriments. And my testimony is that there's virtually no detriments. It fits in well, and the benefits are a rateable and office use in accordance with the items that I indicated. Terry's report further goes on to ask that we clarify that there are no medical uses. It will be professional office, general office, medical
condition of
office
approval?
requires. Excuse me?
A condition of approval, no medical.
That would be a
offices.
condition of approval, that there's no medical office. And the other items in the report, we would satisfy all of RVE's concerns.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yeah, Harry?
I'd like to ask questions on a couple of our comments, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Starting on page 5 of our review, our comment number 3 about the circulation plan. The circulation plan, as we understand it, and where we left it, was that it only functions inside the property for passenger-sized vehicles only. And one of the responses that we received from the design engineer back on March 9th, when we first raised the issue, was indicated that the circulation plan provides access for passenger-sized vehicles only. Large delivery trucks will have to park on Chestnut Street, which is a county road. Is that still the case?
Well, the case here is the type of office that's proposed. We would expect FedEx and UPS trucks, and the fact that we have a 33-foot wide access aisle, it provides adequate parking for the type of vehicles that we would expect to be making the deliveries. In these type of offices, there's no reason to have a larger vehicle make that delivery.
All right, so how does that function if the property is in use? Do they just pull into the aisle, drop off, and then pull out?
No, they pull into one of the parking spaces, deliver their stuff, and leave.
All right. You may want the final circulation plan to indicate that. The testimony that we were given was larger delivery trucks will have to park on Chestnut Street, which obviously would be problematic.
Agreed.
Okay, so.
And if the board acts favorably on the application, we will adjust the circulation plan accordingly.
Thank you. Our comment number 4 is under refuse and recycling. I know that DPW had given approval of a prior concept. One of the plan changes was making a small 4 by 7.5 refuse recycling enclosure shown. How is that getting accessed?
The applicant could get a private pickup, and the private pickup would be arranged at a time when the parking lot was not in use, and the containers could be rolled out for the private pickup.
All right, so you have no objection to making that as part of the approval?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions for Mr. Flannery?
Mr. Chairman, it's Adam. I apologize. I just wanted to clarify in my opening statement, I had the old square footage. Brian's testimony was correct. I just wanted to clarify that since the original date of the hearing, we had met and shrunk the square footage, the footprint. And
So
Brian's testimony was correct.
What's the number again, just to be clear?
Yeah, 2428, I believe, and change per floor.
Okay.
A total of 4,856 square feet.
Correct.
I think you said 56 in the beginning, right?
I said 5,352, and the correct number is 4,856.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize about that.
Okay. I would open up to the public. Is anybody in the public?
You feel?
Yes, yeah, Mr. Starr.
So maybe this is my ignorance, but a variance is when you vary, I would imply, a little bit from a standard. Correct me if I'm wrong, the minimum lot size for this type of use is an acre. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the actual size of this lot is 0.29 of an acre.
That is correct.
It's about 25%.
No, that's not 25%. That's a 75%. Right. That's a 71% change from the requirement.
Yeah, but my only question is, Mr. Stern, it's an existing property. So they're definitely allowed to do something on it.
But they are allowed.
The alternative is to put a duplex there.
So put a duplex there. I guess my question is it the position of this board that ordinances have no meaning, that we can vary something by 71% and say it's a variance? It just strikes me. The reason that Terry's asking all these questions about the garbage and the pickup, well, what if the parking lot is full and Mr. FedEx has to drop off? Where is he parking? It's too small. Why is it too small? Well, because it's only 21% or 29% of what's required. That's why it's too small.
Yeah, but the reason it's 29% of what's required is because it's a existing non-conforming lot, and the municipal land use law and case law treats existing non-conforming lots differently than if we came in with a 2-acre parcel and wanted to chop it into something this size. We wouldn't have gotten to first base with you. This is an existing, which is why I indicated that it qualifies as a C1 variance also, because as you can see from the aerial, there's nothing adjoining it that could be added to it that would change the situation. It's an existing non-conforming lot that's developed on all three sides. So the question from a planning standpoint is what's appropriate on this lot? Is it appropriate for residential that could be scaled down to something small? Or is it appropriate for a
Residential doesn't fit in there. It's
my
commercial.
professional testimony is that the office use is appropriate.
So you're saying,
And we, just 1 second, and we are also in compliance with the parking requirements. And your concern of not having a parking space for a delivery truck could be in any building of any size that's compliant as well.
I hear that, Adam. I guess Brian is maybe teaching me something I didn't know. So you're saying that the municipal land use ordinance basically says if we have a piece of land and it's non-conforming, then we should stretch ourselves to find some useful purpose for it versus leaving it.
The case law addresses that.
But Mr. Stern, not necessarily, even though you build, not necessarily have to build a footprint of 2,600 square feet per floor, whatever it was, 24. Technically, you could say, no, we feel there should be left a little, making the job smaller so the trucks could get in.
Well, no, I guess, my question is more versus, the turning radius and stuff like that.
Right.
Is if something is 71% less than what the ordinance's requirement at a certain point, I mean, I'll ask an absurd thing. What if this was 2,000 square feet? Would we say, okay, we're going to put a building on there because it's a non-conforming lot?
You have no parking then. You would have variances, all the setbacks, all the parking.
John, can you help me out here?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have an undersized lot that doesn't conform, you have to look at whether everything works. And the playing field is tilted on an approved use in favor of giving the applicant the accommodation that they need, but not when it starts not making sense, when it doesn't work, when the circulation's no good, when you're saying we're going to have problems because since the parking lot's always full, the FedEx truck won't be able to park. There does come a point though, when applicant is left with no alternative, and then what it's called is inverse condemnation. Inverse condemnation is when they've been zoned into infill, and there's no good use they could put the property, and then they can bring it for case, and the government, i.e. the Township of Lakewood, could have to pay them whatever the condemnation commissioners think it's worth. But we're not anywhere near that, and I think you should just focus your attention on whether the classic test for the variance makes sense. Is it safe? Does it work? Is it an imposition on the zone plan? Is it an imposition on the neighborhood? Can they provide drainage? Can they circulate cars? Can they park cars? Can they still make good use of the property? And if you think the building's still too big for that, say so and vote no to the application. If you think that they've done everything to mitigate what all their shortfalls are, and you think it works, then and you think it's a good use and all the right way, then vote yes.
I have a question for Brian.
You have to say yes either. You don't have to say no.
Okay.
How much smaller would you have to have a building to get a FedEx truck, let's say, to go around it?
Well, the FedEx truck can make it in here, and the question relates to, is there going to be a parking space for it? And I should point out that Lakewood previously used to have parking for this type of use at 1 per 300, and we're going by the new standard, which was recently adopted at 1 per 250. The 1 per 300 is about 20% less. So if you had a site at 1 per 300, they were full most of the time, and there'd be no spot for the FedEx truck. This particular site at 1 per 250 is in keeping with a more stringent industry standard. And it's my professional opinion that you're going to have a parking spot open for the FedEx truck or the UPS truck.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have any questions? Seeing none, I will open it to the public. Ali, is there any public comment on this application?
Yes, I believe Mr. Jackson has a summary, and I also received one email during the meeting that will not be included in his summary.
Okay, so Mr. Jackson, can you please summarize what you have on the public, and then Ali will read the last one.
Yes, let me get the correct things up here in a minute.
And
okay.
so you get it up, are they for it or against it?
This is, hold on, this is, River Properties, right? We have River Avenue too, let me make sure it's, because yeah, River Avenue Properties, 2406, hold on. So, 8 comments were in favor. The general comments were that, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, approximately 8 public comments were in favor. They think that the project will improve the aesthetics of the area and office space as needed. There were 6 comments that were opposed, citing increased traffic and lack of privacy due to the setback variances. So the board has been provided with all those comments. They can read them themselves. But that's a basic overview. That's what was said. And any member of the public who wants to speak can, of course, look up in the online.
Okay.
Now, you had an additional one?
Sorry, before I get to the additional comments, is Adam, I think if you just look at the data, some of those comments regarding the setbacks, that was with the original submission. As Brian indicated, we had shortened the building and increased setbacks. I just wanted to make sure we have, those comments were not newer than that submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ally, can you please read in the record the last one? We'll bring it up and we can see it.
Is that the right one? 7 point, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was North Edina. It says, hi, I own a house 1 block away from this application. I'm against the sidewalk waiver here. The board must require curb and sidewalk along the entire frontage from North Edina.
Okay, Brian, are we putting sidewalks in? Something I think the board wants.
We will put sidewalk wherever the board wants sidewalk.
Okay, I think that's goes without saying, curbs and sidewalks has to.
I don't want Mr. Zinas walking without sidewalks. We need him around to comment on our applications.
Okay, now we'll do it the same as we did the other application. Is there anybody from the public? I'll ask Kristen if he's still here to unmute everybody. Is there anybody in the public audience who would like to comment on this application? Christine, are you there?
Give me 1 sec.
And just tell me when you is unmute, please.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Okay, everybody, please keep down their voices. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on this application?
We've received 2 more email comments from Hani Stern. I can read them.
Okay, give me a second, Ali. Let me just see if there's anybody in the public, and we'll close it then. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this application, which is?
You hear me? Yes, I would like to.
Okay, 1 second. What's your name?
My name is Penny Koenig. I live right behind the building.
One second.
Where it's supposed.
1 second. You have to be affirmed in, and you'll state your name and your address for the record, and you have to be affirmed. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Koenig, is this your first testimony given before the court of the truth, all truth, and nothing but truth?
Correct.
Yes, okay, state your name for the record.
Penny Koenig.
Koenig, and your address?
21 Blue River Way.
Okay, okay, everybody else, please be quiet. You could proceed with your comments.
Okay, so I live right behind where this proposed building is about to be built. Feel that having although it's a 2-story building, it's 30 feet high and only 18 feet away from my backyard. It's like building a fortune in my backyard. Which I would, so I understand if I would own the property, I would definitely want to build there something as well to make benefit out of it. My question is, does it really have to be so tall and so wide? Perhaps if the builder is asking for variances because he wants to maximize his property and his profit on that, maybe he just only do one and wants to build bigger. Just he reduces the how tall the building is, or perhaps he makes it smaller, further away, and then he goes high. He's asking for 30 feet.
I don't think he's asking, Mr. Koenig, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, he's asking any height variance.
Correct. He's asking only a back set, but I'm saying I would be okay with the setback if it wouldn't be so tall. But being so tall, so close to the property, is really going to block my sunlight, block my privacy and everything, which is really going to be disturbing to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment on this application?
Connie Stern?
Who's that?
Connie Stern?
Okay, you would like to comment on this application?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record and your address, and you have to be affirmed.
17.
Oh boy. Mrs. Stern, are you there?
Ladies and gentlemen, we need everybody who is not speaking to hit the mute button on their microphone so that we don't.
Anybody who's not speaking, only one that should be not muted is Mrs. Stern. Mrs. Stern, whoever that is.
Basically, I have the same concerns as Mr. Koenig. We live in the same next house.
What's your name?
Is this Ms. Stern? Hold on, I see Chaim Stern lit up. Is this Ms. Stern speaking?
Yes.
All right.
You have to be
Please
affirmed.
state your name and address.
Connie Stern, 17 Blue River Way.
All right, do we have your
Affirm.
video? You have to put your video on so we can weigh your credibility and see what you look like when you're testifying.
Okay.
Not your microphone. You have to put your camera on.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you. Please, the both of you, please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and the truth?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
Okay. Do I need to keep the video on?
And, we don't need a lot of redundancy. Just say
Okay.
what your
It's just
concerns
basically
are.
the same idea of blocking the whole trees that we have there now and the height of the building and the garbage pickup situation. Yeah.
Okay, is that it?
The buildings surrounding it are not that high, and then I feel like if a big tall building comes up on there, all the other buildings will eventually follow.
Are there any other properties available on Chestnut? I think it's in between two commercial buildings right now, isn't it? Mrs. Stern?
Yes.
Isn't it between two commercial buildings right now?
Yes.
Okay, are there any other open areas in the area?
Open areas as in
What is it that could be built? Or it's all built up with the commercial properties, with buildings already?
There are commercial properties there now.
All buildings, huh? Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's basically what I was trying to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment on this application?
I would like to make one more comment.
Who's this?
Penny
Yes.
Koenig.
Okay,
If you look at the addresses from all the positive comments, none of them are from within a mile radius. Just want to point that out to the board. It's everyone from further, at least 1 mile or further away, versus the comments from people concerning are really the tight neighbors who are really back to back with the buildings.
okay, thank you. Mr. Flannery, are you there?
Yes.
A question for you, because both of the two neighbors have concern that the building is very high and you'll be looking down at their property. Are there windows on all sides? Are there windows higher up that won't invade their privacy?
The applicant has indicated that they would provide windows on the back that would provide privacy so that nobody could look out, whether that's tinted or blocked, so that there would be no windows looking to the back. In addition, we would do an enhanced buffer in the back of a fence and trees, such that over time it would create a visual barrier as well.
Okay. What size fence are you putting up?
We could put a 6 foot or an 8 foot fence, whichever the board or the neighbors would prefer. And we'll plant the evergreen trees at 6 to 8 foot height.
And all the windows are going to be privacy windows?
Well,
Yes.
the second story, the second story windows.
Second story, and
Be frosted.
frosted or privacy. whatever.
Yeah,
And,
there are no windows on that second floor on the south side.
okay, and also any lighting from the building should be shielded, that should not go onto the neighbor's property.
That is correct.
Is that, you accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to be heard? I didn't close to the public yet. Is there anybody else? I'll wait 1 minute. Okay, seeing now, I'm closing it to the public. And I would ask the board to,
Closing statement, Mr. Chairman?
yes, please.
It's just to very quickly address, we're not seeking any height variances here. We understand that there's some concerns from the neighbor. We're trying to do the best we can in the position of the property that we have. Additionally, the neighboring properties, the commercial ones on each side of ours, tomorrow it could be a new application for, again, a 35-foot building without any variances. So we are being mindful of the neighbors. We are trying to address the concerns. Additionally, there was another neighbor who had reached out. I did email earlier today, Mr. Jackson, just some comments that the neighboring property owner had that we agreed to work with, which was also a fence and moving the garbage away from their side. I would just want to make sure that those are part of the resolution as well.
Okay, thank you. Ally, did you say before that another email came in?
The emails that I received during testimony were from, I'm sorry, I don't remember her last name, but Hani, who we just heard from.
Mrs. Stern, Mrs. Stern.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Koenig, so you don't have any new emails who have not spoken or not been, no,
Just a moment.
I just will make it part of,
Can I add something?
1 second, please.
The last public comments.
And I close it to the public.
The last public comments before Mr. Zinas that I received by email were from several days ago, so they were included in Mr. Jackson's summary.
Okay, I would ask the board, if anybody would like to make a motion on it.
I'll make a motion to approve this application with curb and sidewalk and the provisions that the chairman had brought up.
All the privacy with the lighting and everything. Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second. This is Justin.
Justin,
Can I
second?
clarify that before we take a roll call on that? I don't think that's Ally. I don't think we specified the height of the fence in the back, and I just want to clarify that's no waiver on the curb requirement, correct?
There's no waiver on the curb requirement. No, they have to give it.
Thank you.
Brian, what would you recommend? A 6-foot or 8-foot fence?
I would think the 8-foot fence would provide more privacy.
Okay. Mr. Meyer, what you want to amend your motion, a 6 or an 8-foot?
An 8-foot fence.
8-foot. And Mr. Flansbaum, do you second the 8-foot also?
Yeah, I was under the impression that we were doing an 8-foot. Yeah, I would absolutely ask for the 8-foot.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Garfield,
He has to be unmuted.
Mr. Garfield,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Stern,
No.
Mr. Flansbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herzl,
Yes.
and Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ally, at this time, it's 8:07 right now. I have a wedding still have to go tonight. I can't go past 9 o'clock. That's the latest I can go. We have 3 things on the agenda. We're not gonna get through all 3 tonight. We can go straight, go to number 4. Should we table number 5 and 6 right now?
You mean we should go to number 3 and table 4 and 5?
I don't know, you tell me which one do you think we can do in 45 minutes? I don't want to start something and not finish it.
Migdal Yakov, which is next on the agenda, has many objectors. That's my only concern, is that one may take time. However, it is next in proper succession in order of receipt.
We have objectors.
Who's the attorney on the number 4?
Migdal Yakov.
What?
That's me, Mr. Chairman.
Sean.
Sean Gertner, sorry.
Sean got
We were
9 of
not,
them.
we were not aware of any objectors, quite frankly. I've been in contact with the direct neighbor, and we had worked out the issues, so.
Okay, Ally, how many objectors do you have who
I've
send you
received
comments?
I've received 29 emails, but I believe they're virtually a copy paste of each other. I have not seen indication that they've retained an attorney. So while there are many of them, their comments may be duplicitous.
Are there major variances on the application?
No variances, Mr. Chairman, just simply,
Mr. Chairman, this is Ellie. I think we should go in order. Let's continue
Okay.
in order.
Who said that?
Mr. Renner.
Okay, no problem. Whoever's on number 5 and 6, I don't think we'll get to tonight. Okay, and we can go in order. And Mr. Renner, you're back on this one, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now,
Mr. Chairman, so what are we doing so we can cut people loose? You said we're not going to get to 5 and 6. We're going to
I don't think so. They want to wait around. I have to.
Well, six has already been adjourned, June 29th. So
He means 4 and 5.
4 and 5, okay. 4 and 5. So if that's your call, Mr. Chairman, and
1 second. Which one was 6 was adjourned? No.
Or it was adjourned already.
You may not be looking at the latest agenda, Mr. Herzl.
Okay, so I'm okay.
So what the names are, number 3 is Joe Parker Road. That's what's next. Number 4 is Yeshiva Shaga Saraya.
Right.
And number 5 is Kikar Shabbos. So
Okay, so I think we should go in order. We'll go to Migdal Beis Yaakov. Hopefully we can finish in time. And number 5 and 6 want to wait around. I can't go past 9. If Mr. Rennet wants to take over or somebody wants to stay later, I don't think so. We have.
I thought didn't Ellie have an issue with number 4 with Yeshiva Shaga Saraya?
No.
Yes.
Oh, she said Mr. Rennet cannot sit on that one. Okay. Okay, so let's go in order and hope for the best.
John, I wanted to point out to you that Allie was laughing at the way you're pronouncing some of these names.
I do the best. I didn't go to St. Mary's like Mr. Flannery, but I went to St. Joe's. It started with the Saint, and we didn't have any biases. I don't know.
Okay. Allie's doing a great job in the Jewish names. She learned pretty well. Okay, so let's continue. And the last 2 things on the agenda may not be heard tonight.
Okay, so this is ST 2430AA for Migdal Beis Yaakov. It's a change of use site plan exemption to convert a house to a school on Joe Parker Road.
Okay, Terry, as soon as Ally has it up, can you please go through the report?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm reading from our April the 28th review. First, at the bottom of page 2, we have various waivers. Again, this is a change of use application and not a site plan. So the plans are more conceptual than a typical site plan design. We have those listed. We recommend waiver for hearing purposes.
Okay, do we have a motion to go along with the engineer's recommendation?
I'll move it. It's Ellie.
Ellie moved. I'll second this.
Second.
Second by Mr. Meyer. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion waivers approved. Next.
Thank you. Continuing going to page 3 under Roman numeral 2 zoning. The properties is the R20 zone. Schools of permitted use. It does not appear that any bulk variances are required.
Ally, could you move down the page, please? Thank you. Okay.
Design waivers required from providing curb and sidewalk along the frontage of Joe Parker Road, which is a county roadway. Waivers also required from providing 20-foot buffer to an adjacent non-residential use, as well as a waiver being necessary for parking within the existing buffer. And finally, design waivers are required from providing driveway widths of less than 20 feet wide. Again, the driveways are going to be subject to Ocean County review as well. And that's all the relief, Chairman.
Okay, Terry, before we go on to the applicant, is there any reason why we should not ask for sidewalks on this application? Is there any reason why the county would not even want it?
I'm not aware of any reason why the sidewalk, I'm sorry, why the county would not want sidewalk. They typically have rules as to where the sidewalk is placed, which I'm sure is going to come up on their review, should Lakewood indicate that they want sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gertner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We submitted a statement of operations briefly today, but I'm going to read from that because I think it summarizes exactly
Mr. Gertner, was it submitted as evidence?
It was submitted today. It's a statement of operations, but I'm going to read it into record.
Okay, now, Ali, do you have it? Mark it in as evidence?
While she's doing that,
I'm
though,
sorry,
Mr. Chairman,
what is it you're looking for? I was trying to send an email to Mr. Jackson.
I'm sorry. It's the statement
okay.
of operations that was submitted earlier today, but it really serves as my opening statement.
Got it.
Because it's perhaps as you put it on the board could read it along with me. I'm going to summarize it by indicating that this is a unique application for Lakewood Township, as the applicant proposes a girls' post-secondary school dedicated to post-secondary education. As I indicated, we're not aware of any similar opportunity within the township. Based upon the submission at this 1.76 acre site, and it's uniquely shaped in the sense that it's large, it has larger frontage than to the rear. The client proposes to serve a total of 25 students, 20 of whom will reside on site, along with professional staff consisting of 4, of which 2 will reside on site. Parking for 3 cars with 11 proposed vehicles is proposed, of which 1 will be dedicated to staff. No student will be permitted to drive and park at the school.
What do you mean by parking for 3 cars with 11 proposed vehicles? How many parking spaces are you proposing?
There's up to 11 spots. Mr. Flannery will discuss that.
Okay, so there'll be 11 spots, and you're saying that you only need 3.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No student will be permitted to drive and park at the school. We perceive that all trips will be by automobile, though the school administration will look to develop a rideshare plan. Thus, no buses are proposed, as bus transportation is not available. Because there will be students on site with various classroom studying and other activities, there's no set hours of operation for special events. In the event of a special event, no pickup from the site would occur past 11 o'clock. Because of the nature of the school and the unique location of the property, it abuts one of the last farms in Lakewood. The applicant does propose to maintain the semi-rural nature of the site and proposes, Mr. Chairman, only curb, but we would request a waiver from sidewalk unless, of course, the county proposes it. The applicant believes the waiver of sidewalk is supported because of the location of the site and a desire not to encourage traversing the site via sidewalk, nor encouraging congregation in the front yard at the street. The applicant, this is important as well, the applicant further proposes enhancing buffering along what is the westerly edge of the property, and it will buffer its trash enclosure to the eastern side. Finally, as requested as a condition of any approval, the applicant agreed to specifically obtain both Ocean County and Lakewood MUA approvals. I should note as well that I had been in contact with Gwen Schoenfeld, who's an attorney in North Jersey. Her mother, Elaine, is the next door neighbor, and we've been in contact with her. I believe she submitted a letter to the board as well. And the applicant agrees to work with the board professionals with regard to the buffering, as I have indicated, and certainly, as I said, the trash enclosure will be away from her mother's site. Again, Gwen is a attorney at law. I happen to have graduated high school with her as well, so we've been in contact early. But with that, I'd like to call Mr. Flannery to discuss the application.
Mr. Jackson?
I have to find my, there it is, it was muted. Mr. Flannery,
You don't know by heart? You know by heart yet?
what's that?
You don't know it by heart, the swearing in?
No, I couldn't find the mute button, which if most judges who know me would agree with that. Mr. Flannery, do you swear affirm the testimony you will give before this board the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner. As indicated, this is a application for a change of use to change an existing home on 1.76 acres on Joe Parker Road to a school. It would be a girls' post-secondary school. And as Mr. Gertner indicated, he's not aware of any other school of this type. I've never testified for a girls' post-secondary school, so it's a unique application for this property. And I think part of the setting for it in this rural area where the property abuts the Dulet's farm, which was farmland preserved. It's a farm that's been in Lakewood since I initially moved in there in '79. It was farmed and they it's farmland preserved, so the farm will be there in perpetuity. And if the statement of operations that Mr. Gertner indicated indicates the very low impact of this proposed school. It's a total of 25 students. 20 of them are going to live on site along with 2 of the staff members. They have a total of 4 staff members. 2 of them will be residing on site with 20 of the students. That leaves 5 students that will be dropped off there. No students are allowed to bring cars. A little bit of confusion on the parking space numbering is the original plan just showed striping for 3 parking spaces. The current plan shows 4 parking spaces, one of them being handicapped adjacent to the structure, and then there's an existing circular drive, and it shows the additional 7 parking spaces or places that vehicles could park along there. There's certainly no.
How wide is it there? If a car parks there, a car could pass and go out?
Yes. It appears from the plan. I didn't see it labeled anywhere, but it appears to be about 18 feet wide, and they did show 9-foot wide parking stalls on it, and the driveway is wider than the parking stalls that are shown on there. But my testimony is only 3 parking spaces are required. This is just showing that there is the availability for additional cars to park, and I don't know why additional cars would be there. The statement of operations is pretty clear. 25 students, 20 of them residing there, none of them allowed to have cars, and the other 5 need to be dropped off and work that out. Looking at the report, as indicated, we're in the R20 zone, which requires 20,000 square feet, and we have close to 20,000 square feet, half an acre. We have close to 2 acres. Item 2 in the report indicates it appears no bulk variances are required. That's my testimony as well. The design waiver that we requested for curb and sidewalk along the entire track frontage, as Mr. Gertner indicated, we're trying not to provide a place for people to congregate or walk. It's a very limited impact use, but we would leave it up to the board. We feel it's not necessary, but we would defer to the board. Additionally, we're asking for design waiver for providing a 20-foot buffer to adjacent non-residential. We did submit an aerial that shows where the adjacent lots are and the existing dwelling, and you can see that based on what's there, there's really not a buffering problem. And additionally, we're asking for design waiver for parking within the required buffer, and that's existing parking that's been there for many years. The storage of refuse would be in accordance with DPW. Again, based on limited nature, I would expect that we would have rollout cans, but if they would prefer a dumpster, we certainly have plenty of room for a dumpster. The plans do show a refuse enclosure on the site in proximity to the parking spaces, but we would defer to whatever's required by the DPW. And the rest of the comments in the report, we would comply with the requests.
That building's existing, or you're building a new building? It's a
It's
house.
an existing building, it's an existing house.
Okay, and the pool is staying in the back?
Yes,
And you're gonna have the people are gonna reside and learn in that building? You have enough room in that building?
that is correct. As the architectural plans that were submitted show the 2 classrooms and an office, as well as the residential bedrooms.
Okay, how big is this lot?
1.76 acres.
Oh, so you're not asking any variances on lots?
Correct.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, the concept showing the parallel parking on the internal access drive, I'd recommend as a condition of approval, if the board acts favorably, that we get a fully dimensioned site plan that shows adequate aisle width, as well as parallel parking width per UDO standards. I assume that's not a problem for the applicant.
Not a problem.
Yeah, I would think not, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a couple things. Mr. Flannery, first, although you've indicated you're a licensed engineer and planner, you're also a licensed architect, correct?
That is correct.
So when you talk about the architectural plans, you can relate to them as an expert as well, correct?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You're aware of Ms. Schoenfeld's letter to me, and she indicated it was submitted to the board dated May 20, 2021, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, you reviewed it, and you would have no objection as a condition of approval as an expert to ensure that there be no spillage, no lighting spillage off the property, correct?
That is correct.
In addition, although as indicated by the aerial, the site is well buffered with natural vegetation, you would work with the board professional to enhance any required vegetative buffering, at least to the western side of the property, correct?
That is correct.
As well as any enhanced buffering for the trash enclosure, correct?
Yes.
I have no further thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I have no further questions.
Brian, a fast question. As an architect, you said there's 25 students max in the building, and you said that 20 are gonna reside in the building and 5 are gonna come every day. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So basically, each room in the basement is 300 and change square feet. Is that enough? Is that enough to put 7 kids in 7 students in one?
Yeah, it's basically going to be dormitory type residential units.
And there's 7 students and 300 square feet on. It's workable.
Yes, that's my professional opinion.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions from any board members? Seeing none, I would open it to the public. So, Ali, I'm not going through 29. Is it all repetitious or they're different?
I believe Mr. Jackson has a summary up to comment 27 that was received around 1 o'clock today. And then we received one more duplicate one late this evening, and then a unique one from Mr. Zinas just moments ago.
Okay, so Mr. Jackson, all the 29 that Ali is talking about, are they all, against it, or are they for it?
Give me 1 minute. I just have to make sure I have the right one. This is
Because if you have some that are for it and some are against, then I would need 2 summaries.
This is 2430, right? Migdal Bias Yaakov?
Migdal Beis Yaakov, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have 25 comments in opposition, generally stating that the applicant has not submitted sufficient information regarding the impact on surrounding and residential uses. No information on hours and days of operation. No information on the number of trips generated to and from the site. Is concerned with the potential for noise and traffic generated by a school use on a relatively small lot. Gwen Schoenfield asked that the planning board ensure the septic system is large enough to accommodate some additional people using the school resorting to the dormitory that is modified to do so. Opposed, legal counsel, Houston McNulty stated that sufficient proofs have not been submitted concerned with potential for noise and traffic generated by a school use on a relatively small yacht. And I thought I saw Mr. McNulty on the screen before. Are you present, sir?
Mr. Jackson, I just want to say for the record that the question about septic, that is a county issue, and the health department will be dealing with it. If it could not, if it's not big enough to hold 25 students, they will not get a C of O. Is that
That's
correct?
my understanding as well.
Yes,
And
Brian.
I can make that representation. I
An outside
apologize.
agency.
Yes, Mr. Flannery.
Okay, so to alleviate the neighbors concerned about that, and I do think that Brian, you did say with hours operation, you did say the hours of when it's going to be, how many students. I think you did address a lot of the questions for Mr. Gertner, and you said it publicly. I think you did address it. Okay, is there? Yeah, well, Mr. Redditt, you want to say something? What was that?
Not this time.
Okay, is there anybody from the public? I'll ask Christine, please unmute everybody. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this application?
Yes, there is.
Okay, one at a time. What's your name?
Melanie Meyer, am I the one next?
Okay, yes, you're the one who said. Everybody else, please be
Yes.
quiet.
Yes.
Miss Meyer.
Sure. Ms. Meyer, please.
Oh boy, oh boy. Anybody else who's not speaking besides Miss Meyer, please mute yourself. And Miss Meyer, okay.
Please turn on your camera, Ms. Meyer, and please also turn on your microphone.
Where they at? Yeah.
You have a camera?
Yes, I do.
If you
Okay,
hover
so,
your
and you have to be sworn or affirmed then.
Oh, yes. Is it on? It's starting. Sorry, we're a
No.
bit slow here.
No problem. Take your time.
We're on Joe Parker Road. We have very slow internet.
Okay.
So, did it go yet? Oh my goodness.
It's like that commercial with the slow skis. Remember the two turtles?
Oh, is it working? It says it's on. It says it's on. I don't understand why the signal isn't coming through.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear a firm testimony to give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Can you see me?
No,
I
we
don't.
cannot.
All right. Well, I do have my right hand up.
Okay. And you affirm or swear or affirm, right?
Yes, she
Yes.
did. Please proceed.
Okay, and what's your address again?
567 Joe Parker Road. I'm on the other side of
Okay.
the proposed
Application.
school and
Yeah.
and dorm. Yes. I have a comment first. I think having lived here, and my mother is the late Helen Doulette Meyer, so I am a Doulette. And I do believe that maintaining the curb and sidewalk requirement would be a very good thing in maintaining the rural atmosphere. From a county road perspective.
One second. You're opposed to sidewalks?
No,
or
I'm not.
You want sidewalks?
No, I think it would destroy the rural atmosphere.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. So you don't want sidewalks?
And there's nothing, there's nothing here at all. The only places that you will find some sidewalks are in much later developments where it's housing for many houses. Otherwise, it's just left au naturel. As far as plowing in the winter, it does make it much easier for the county snow plowers to not have to worry about those things.
Okay.
The other thing, I do have a question for Sean Gertner.
Yeah, Mr. Gartner. Mr. Gartner, are you there?
Are you there? Yes, hi. I know many members in your family. You're probably your great aunt Roz or Roz Gertner, and I went to school with Valerie. She was in my class. So are you Val's brother or?
This really is irrelevant to our
I
inquiry.
know, but I just wanted to say, but anyway, and you mentioned Ms. Schoenfeld. I wanted to ask you if at what you proposed, that's the final size of the school and dorm.
It is the size that would be approved by the board now. If there's any other future change, they would have to come back, the applicant would have to come back before the board.
So it's not necessarily what would be there in the end? Is this an initial?
It's the current plan. None of us can see into the future, but it is the current plan.
Yeah, Mr. Gertner, again, if you do any changes, you have to come back to the board. If you want to build a new building, you have to come back to the board and you will renotice and all the neighbors will get to hear and voice their opinion if you want to put up a new building there. Is that correct?
Okay.
Without question, Mr. Chairman, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. And another question is, the Francis land, which I assume is sold, he has lovely trees there. Those are all going to be kept? The trees and the landscaping as it is?
The current plan is to maintain as much of the vegetation as possible because there's no new development on site.
Okay, so all that buffer onto the farm would be left there?
In the rear?
There's a lot of oak trees and there's stuff also, say bordering, not my property, but Mr. Abadi's property.
Certainly I can't speak as well, maybe Mr. Flannery can, to Mr. Abadi's property. Certainly yours, to the farm. There is one reason I could, you talked about my family. So first of all, my dad is Jerry, just to line you up.
Okay.
So if he could still bowl, he would show up. But in any event. So one reason that I took this there's two reasons really I took this application, and I get to talk about it personally. One, and you know this also, we don't have too many girls in the family. So when I heard the fact that this was a post-secondary girls' school, that was something that was very special to me. And on top of that, the vision of the school in terms of its transition, it's not additional housing. It's the rabbi is very protective of the fact that he borders a protected farm, protected not only through transfer of development rights, but also the Right to Farm Act itself. That's very important to this particular rabbi. He understands how important it is to the neighbors and to the town. So his plans right now, particularly as to the farm, is to maintain that buffering as best as possible. And it's a good Mr. Flannery would agree with this too. It's a good transitional use. It's not as intense, quite frankly, as additional housing that could go on that site.
Yes. I would agree with that. Are most of the students, I presume, it'll be like a boarding school, correct?
Yeah, they're post-high school.
Okay, but if they'll be living there, I presume they're like, it'll be like, I guess like a boarding school, college, that they would go home weekends and such.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. So they went, do you have any rough idea of the hours of operation?
Well, since there's going to be, and again, Mr. Flannery could add to this, but since there's going to be 20 kids there, there's no activity. I mean, they'll be on site. We've indicated that there'll be no light spillage, and if there's some sort of special event.
Oh, okay.
And, but I'll add to answer your question. You know, again, we're trying to be good neighbors. If in fact there is a special event, there will be no pickup or drop off after 11 o'clock.
Okay. And you mentioned specifically light spillage. That is it, because it is pretty quiet out here.
That's the goal. That's why we appreciate, and I appreciate your comments with regard to support of the waiver for curb and sidewalk at this particular location. Having some history at the location myself because of the farm and my old man, I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Mike.
You're welcome.
Anybody else from the public would like to be heard? I'm looking around. Christie, is everybody unmuted?
One moment.
Before I close it.
I have emailed comments from Mr. Zinus as well.
Put it back together.
Yes, I'd like to be heard, please. Mike McLaughlin.
Yes. 1 second, please. Okay, everybody else, please mute yourself. Mike, Mr. Jackson, could you swear him in?
Yes, did you say Mike Dalton?
No, this is Mike McLaughlin, 11 Eldorado Drive.
Thank you. Please raise your hand. You swear from the testimony you give before the court, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
I just have a few questions. It is unique that this is a girls' school, and I must say, I was surprised to hear that, but it sounds like something that we've not seen around here before.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Pardon
I'm
me?
sorry. I think maybe you're shuffling papers. They happen to be near your microphone. Just keep an eye on that.
Okay, I will watch that. Thank you. The application states that there's a pool on the property. I was just wondering if you're planning on having the students use that pool. And if they are using that pool, do you have lifeguards and do you have security on it so that it is not an attractive nuisance for other folks climbing fences to get into it? Do you have any security plan for that?
I think that's a better question for Mr. Flannery, just to talk about. Obviously, there's going to be self-security there, and it's an existing pool. Maybe you have some additional comments.
But it's an existing pool, which per code needs to be fenced. And prior to getting a CO, we would need to prove that it meets the existing code. Yes, it would be for the students that are staying at the school. And as far as with respect to it, the safety of it and other people coming in, it's probably safer than a residential dwelling where you only have a few people around. There would be people there from time to time and any unauthorized people going in. But the main question with respect to safety is the fencing that's required by code that will be required prior to a CO.
It's going to be locked at all times unless when the students are there.
Yes.
Okay.
You plan on, I mean, they can use it at any special hours that they can use it? Will they be limited to the number of hours that they'll be able to use that pool? And will there be lifeguards present?
There would be no lifeguards present. It would be something they would use as you would in a residential setting. They would use it at their own risk. And the school rabbi would establish the hours that it's available. Obviously, they're there to learn. So during the periods of learning, there would be nobody swimming. But during recreation periods, that would be one form of recreation, weather permitting, that would be available for them.
I would ask that you put some limit to the number of hours as to whether they'd be swimming at 1 o'clock in the morning. I would presume that's not the case, but if you don't put it in, it may happen. But I believe there should be some hour limitation.
I agree. And Mr. Gertner indicated there would be no pickups allowed after 11. I think 11 would be a good time to indicate that there would be no swimming after 11.
There's no activity, I think, outside, past 11. I think normally students are always in bed by 11.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Normally.
I couldn't expect
Normally.
any sorority parties here.
Yeah, I'll let my daughter know.
All right. We have another question that I have, and I may be not understanding the architectural drawing since I am not an architect, but there does not appear to be any windows in those basement bedrooms.
The
And-
basin bedrooms will be required to have egress windows per code. And if the board acts favorably on this application, that will be accomplished as part of resolution compliance.
Okay, because it didn't look like to me that there was any bridge there, but obviously we would need to have those in there for the
Yes.
safety of the students.
Mr. McLaughlin, I see that you are an architect.
No, not true. Just a student of life.
Right.
I think at that point is the last question that I have. The others were answered.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else in the public would like to be heard? Seeing none, I'll close it to the public.
Mr. Herzl, I have two comments from Mr. Zinas to read into the record.
Please, go ahead.
The first one says, kudos to Mr. Gertner for his creativity in wanting to maintain the rural feel of the area. However, he is out of luck as there are several other schools just down this block. Therefore, I urge the board to require sidewalk along the property frontage. That's from Moshe Zinas. And then he continues, there is sidewalk right across the street along the Horizon property frontage. Sidewalk is very appropriate along this frontage as well.
Okay,
That's all I
and,
have.
okay, and what I want to add, Joe Parker, I think people drive very fast up and down Joe Parker. They're pretty fast down there. I would like to have something, or sidewalks, or maybe a meandering path of asphalt. Should be cheaper for the school if it's only temporary, but have something that the kids don't walk on the road. And I would like, first of all, I'm closing it to the public right now. And I would like to hear feedback from Mr. Stern. Mr. Rennett, what's your opinion about the sidewalks?
I would make a motion to approve it with sidewalks.
Regular sidewalks or asphalt?
Even asphalt's fine, as long as people have a place to walk. If they want to, it's some sort of a hybrid between maintaining the rural area.
Yeah, because eventually,
Still there.
Mr. Rennett, eventually, the school is successful, they're going to be building a new building. They're not going to be living in this house.
And I'll come back for a full site plan.
It's
with
a
the
comeback
whole
for full
building. I
site
agree.
plan. Right. So
I would be okay now with the asphalt.
okay, Mr. Stern, are you okay with that too?
A question, isn't this right next to Chaim Abadi's high school that we approved last year? And if so, did that have sidewalks? The property right next to this, it would be to the east, is a girls' high school. It's associated, that was associated with Chaim Abadi. We approved it about a year ago.
I can check if you give me a moment.
Okay.
I can tell you, I live next door.
Does it have
I have
sidewalks?
a vague recollection that one of the Dulett family members came out and and this might be a different application, but urged that there be no sidewalks on the farm side.
Yes, that's
I don't know.
familiar. That is very familiar.
But we would have to check that. I don't know if we can answer that tonight.
Okay,
I think we should be consistent with what's in the area. That's all I'm saying. And if we required sidewalks for Chaim Abadi's high school, we should probably require them here. And if we didn't, we probably should.
Chairman,
Yeah.
this is Melanie Meyer. I live at 567.
Okay.
If I could make a comment, I know you're closed, but
Okay.
I am right next door to the
Might be able to
Abadi
help us
school.
with this.
To be affirmed then.
No, she's already under.
Okay.
I'm under oath.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Can you help Mr. Stern with this question? Is Rebbe Body's school, does that have sidewalks?
No, and they were not required. And we did not bring that up. It just went through without it anyway. I was at that hearing. It was, if I remember correctly, that was in 2019,
Oh,
in May or June.
I'm dating myself.
Okay.
So,
Chairman, this is Justin. I'm sorry, Ms. Meyer. Yeah, I mean we've made these exceptions for schools in the past where we know they're going to come back eventually with a full blown site plan where we've said, okay, just to minimize the cost at this time, just do like a meandering asphalt path. I would personally be okay with that.
Okay, so I think I think the consensus of the board is to have a cheaper meandering path temporarily until they come back with a full site plan.
The approach
And
next door, just for your information, was that the applicant will provide sidewalks at some point, but for now, they would post a bond
okay, thank you.
for curb and sidewalk.
So let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay, I'm closing it again, second time to the public, it's closed, and I would ask for a motion on this application.
I'll make a motion to approve. It's Ellie Renner with meandering asphalt, and they're not required to post a bond for a future sidewalk.
Okay, do we have a second?
I would second that, Justin.
Second, roll call, please. Ally, you're muted.
Mr. Garfield.
Is he muted? Mr. Garfield?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Stern.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Renner.
Yes.
And Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gertner, good night. Okay.
Be well.
Yes, it's 10 to 9 right now. We are not listening to the last two applications.
I have recommendations on when we can schedule if the chairman is so inclined.
Yes.
Can you interrupt 1 second? I'm sorry. It's Abe. Can we squeeze in one? It'll be a fast one. It'll be an easy one.
I have to leave unless Mr.
I'm
Renner
going
wants
to
to.
put you on next week for Chagas area.
And next week you'll have it, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would recommend SP 2369 Yeshiva Chagas area. I don't believe we've received any public comments on that. I think we have time next week to add it in with a few other schools that we have. The one following that, SP 2413 for Kikar Shabbos. I have received many public comments and complaints and concerns. I also note it's not a school. Our agendas are pretty heavy in the beginning of June with several school applications. I would really like to put Kikar Shabbos on June 22nd, which may give the applicant some time to meet with some of the neighbors and review some of those comments that they emailed. If we try and squeeze it on any earlier, it may not get heard anyway if the board is going to prioritize.
So Alan, if we can, we have met with a lot of those neighbors. I understand, and I'm on the 15th anyway with other applications. We understand we'll understand that if we may not be able to get reached, I would just ask to put it on for the 15th as well. You can put it whenever you put it in.
The 15th has Hader B'nai Torah, which is the only reason I wasn't considering that one.
Okay, so the 20.
Yeah, I think we have to try to give the courtesy to the schools to get them in as before September. Anybody needs that's been our policy always to go with schools ahead. So Ally, I think you're correct. So Chagas area will be heard next week, and Kikar Shabbos, you said
the 22nd.
June 22nd, and I would recommend that Mr. Jackson make the announcement on both of those so that they don't need to renew it.
There it is. Sorry, I had got two computers going here. I had to find the mute button. So members of the public, be advised. Hold on. That number 4 on tonight's calendar, Yeshiva Chagas Araya, has been adjourned, and that will be heard on what date, Ally?
next week, Tuesday.
Which is what date?
June 1st.
On June 1st, 2021, at 6 o'clock in the Zoom format, or in the virtual format as set out in the notices. What about the next one? What's the date of that going to be?
June 22nd for Kikar Shabbos.
Oh, sounds like they
So
pushed it
number
off.
be further advised that number 5 on tonight's calendar, SB 2413, has been adjourned as Kikar Shabbos. That'll be heard on June 22nd, 2021, 6 o'clock in virtual format as set forth in the notices and as this meeting was conducted. As to both cases, people may submit comments or may participate electronically as has been done tonight and as is set forth in the notices.
Thank you.
Further notices
you.
of the- Although actually, I think Mr. Pfeffer is going to renotice one of his cases.
Okay, up to number 5, approval of minutes. Anybody like to push into?
So moved, Justin.
Moved. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of bills. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I would ask the board to, before we sign off, please, we're trying to accommodate all the schools. Whoever can make it next week, please let Ally know that we have at least 5 people who can make it next week. We'd like to have a quorum.
I do note, I think next week is the week that Mr. Meyer can't come, if I have that accurately. And other than that, I haven't heard from anyone about availability.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stern, are you okay?
I'll know, Ali, I'll know closer to the meeting.
Okay, no problem.
I think I'm around.
From allowed to go to Israel.
Mr. Rennes, are you around? Checking. Ally, hopefully, other members who are not here tonight, hopefully they'll be available next week and we should have a quorum.
Yes.
I'll try to reach out to them earlier, towards the end of this week or the beginning of next week to know and make sure that we have a quorum.
I believe we have 4 schools next week. I don't have the agenda open, but I'm looking at 4 with Mr. Auerbach's name on them. So it's 4 schools and I think 1 minor subdivision.
He needs them all to be done last week.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody have a great night. It was
Thank you.
exciting. It was a
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Good night, everyone.